Okay, welcome here. Doovid here. Got the post debate stream. If anyone was watching that, I just started. I messed up my Twitter link. I'm not sure if anyone's going to join me for the interest in this. We'll see if anyone shows up. I watched the debate a little bit. It was a decent debate. There was something to it. I'm even going to put the link in the chat, and if someone wants to come on and talk about it. It was kind of disappointing that Analytic Chick, who unfortunately has been trolling me for a long time, he was basically incoherent. Didn't seem logical. BigCatKayla, was an easy victory for her, and that's all there. That's basically all there is to it. If someone wants to come on, it'd be easier for me to to give a rundown. If you want obviously I'm a multiculturalist. I'm not ethnic or a civic nationalist, and I support something completely different. In terms, obviously, like most Jews are multiculturalists. There's a reason why Jews are multiculturalists, and you can argue a lot of the right-wing Jews are civic nationalists because we're a racial minority, and we can't be an ethnic nationalist in a country where we're a small minority. We're going to say you should make a special exception and just allow Jews to be the one minority. It doesn't work out. So you're a Jew, you really can't be anything other than a multiculturalist or possibly a civic nationalist. So hence the incoherence of Analytic, and Big Cat drilled her on the Israel question and was like, well, you belong in Israel, so why don't you go to Israel? And so she had the American we level. You hear, Brundle?
Yeah, man, that was a complete shit show.
Yeah, it was basically pathetic. If you give the boxing metaphor, it was in order to get your record up for debates, you put yourself up against a very easy opponent. So BigCatKayla.
I couldn't. That's exactly the way.
Gets to notch a victory against Analytic Chick, and I think you would have beat her easily. I'm not sure if you were arguing civic nationalism. I was saying earlier, you can't be a Jew and be an ethnic nationalist because we're a minority. So it's pretty obvious what I say to people. Saying Jews by definition are multicultural people because we're a vast minority. And so her arguments were incoherent, illogical, and she was basically saying I agree with you on everything except the JQ. Please be nice to me. Please don't make fun of me because I'm Jewish.
Yeah, I mean, there's that. There's the fact that, look, man, it was like a drunk Yenta versus a watered down, like a poor man's version of Patrick Little talking points. To me, so let me just, for background for people watching, sometime this afternoon, AC's been backing out all day. She met, I tell her she needs to not back out, she's gonna look like a bitch. And then she's like, well, why don't you do it? Don't you care about whether your wife and son are gonna end up in an oven or whatever? And I'm like, okay, that's not, I'm not a civ nat, okay, but so Analytical Chick adds me to the debate stream. I was like, look, if you need me to step in, I will argue something, whatever, I don't care. I want to argue with Kayla, I'll find a reason, okay? So she brings me in, and she's like, Brundlefly, step in. And we decided that what we were going to debate about was the good Jews question. Basically, are there good Jews? Something I've argued for a while. And then literally 20 minutes before the time the debate's going to start, AC's like, I just got home and I got my mouse to work. My mouse works. And so okay. And then the guy's like, well, I don't know what to do. Kayla, like, you choose, and of course, like, Kayla knows damn well, like, to your point, David, like, Kayla can't actually debate anyone with a penis. Like, it would be a wrap.
Well,
So
I
she's
don't
like,
know
"Oh, I want to do
about that.
AC." Well,
I mean, a woman could debate a man. There's women who are, but I mean, I don't think she doesn't have that much scholarship. I mean, she's not going to debate someone for higher
she has
someone.
the ability to repeat everything she's heard from like the low level TRS guests she's
But, I mean,
like
I would
for a show.
reject that because she's a woman. But I mean, like, I mean, obviously, there's some women
Well, I mean, women fundamentally can't understand politics. Like, they don't understand the motivations of men. Like,
that's possible.
war,
But I mean,
culture, art. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are
I'm
the
generally
purview
an
of men.
egalitarian, so I just don't push back.
I know,
on
but you don't deny the difference. I mean, God made man and women different. Correct?
Yeah, but I'm saying there are. I mean, there are women who excel at debate, and saying like I'm not. He's saying that it's an unnecessary part of your argument, and saying okay, she's a woman, and most of her value as a host is just kind of like an easy to talk.
Oh, yeah, her value. Well, no, I mean, her value as a host. I mean, look, she's.
It's comfy tangent.
Look,
You know,
yeah,
she has a decent show with images.
It's so comfy that there's no show prep. Like, I get it. Okay.
Just easy. It's like daytime talk show, and it's like I don't know if it's like Oprah or something like that, but it's like a white nationalist version of Oprah.
Yeah, but it's more like I don't know. The point is she's not. I mean, like, she's equipped to defeat AC, but the thing is, like, they didn't even debate because it degenerated into like Kayla she didn't even make statements. She like asked questions and then she would like be condescending with some snide remark, and then she would like that feigned indignation about like, I mean, it's just I can't even watch her show anymore because it's just like a bunch of beta orbers licking her, what, because
I don't need to
she's a girl.
on it. I'm saying, like,
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, they have their lips
I'm not a
firmly glued
degenerate.
to her ass. As you would say, their lips are firmly glued to her ass.
Yeah, and they don't even know what she is. I mean, just an avatar in it. So I mean,
yeah, she's just a mem, dude. She's just a fucking mem.
And even like when Patrick Little lost, like he was like, "Is Big Cat Kayla there?" Saying like the line. And now she's got David Duke on the show, and I'm saying there's an audience for her, and I'm not saying she's decent at what she does, and like I do think she won the debate relatively tonight, but I think it was unbecoming of her because it just, just like it got boring quickly. It was obvious that Analytical Chick didn't know what she was talking about, and so just like either finish her off or have mercy on her. So it should be one or the other. So it's either just like, okay, this is very easy. It was basically done. The debate should have been over in 15, 20 minutes. Which is just like Analytics should go back to Israel. Your logic does not add up. And, it could have been over at then, and then she dragged it on for an hour, and it's like, like, why are you picking on this poor woman? Like, to some extent, it made the Big Cat look bad.
Yeah, no, that was in my opinion, it should have gone like 15, 20 minutes. He should have called it, and he should have moved on to something else.
Yeah, we should have had you on it. It's just like,
Yeah, like, get rid of Kayla too. Like, bring Asmodor on, or give me, like, how many of those Nazis want a piece of me? Like, bring them all on.
I mean, the referee should have just called the fight, basically.
AC's sound quality was terrible. It's just, this is the thing. I mean, look.
I don't know if, Big Cat had some kind of like ego-like thing, like, look how easy, but it wasn't.
Of course.
If she was crushing Halsey or something, that would have been different because Halsey's someone who, he's debated all these people. He debated Duke and he debated Little, and like relatively a lot of people think Halsey won those debates. No one, like, Analytics Chick has a small channel. She never gets really over 10 viewers. No one really had much thought that she was going to win this, and she basically embarrassed herself. Unfortunately, like, she wasn't prepared. Her arguments weren't coherent. She didn't really have facts or anything.
I mean, she's not a good debater.
And she seemed like oblivious to the fact of how
she sounded.
Yeah, and it's like she's basically like she's with like basically on the National Socialist channel, and and she's largely agreeing with them, and her arguments aren't coherent, and just like it didn't even make any sense. I listened to it, and I was like, why am I listening to this? And in the my personal stake in it, that like for whatever reason, Analytic Chick has basically been pure bashing me and trolling me for like 3 months straight, 4 months, since the first time I appeared on YouTube. She was there saying, I don't like this guy. This guy's a fraud. And so, here I got this woman that's been against me for months versus, Big Cat, who obviously, she's probably a National Socialist, the white nationalist, not a big fan of Jews, but relatively, she's been very nice to me. I've streamed with her a few times together. I've never had a problem with her. So, like, I'm in the corner of BigCatKayla on this because of a personal beef with Analytic, and she's
Wait,
not.
so you're compromising principle for personal relationship? I thought this was all business all the time, dude.
Well, I'm just laying out the facts on the table. Like I was saying, I didn't have any stake. Like, who cares who won? Like I'm more autistic. Like, I'm not much of like a blood sport debate. What does it mean to win a debate? Like what'd you win? Like collect your prize? What's Big Cat's prize for winning this debate?
Yeah. Hey, well, and to Deuce X Suburbia says, I don't think BCK is National Socialist. I don't know. I mean, she definitely pals around with.
I think the house
And panders too. She panders to like the hardest edge. I mean, just look at who watches her show. Her chat is some of the edgiest group of goys on the internet.
And it's unclear she has a coherent political worldview or system. And like, I don't know. Would you have been arguing civic nationalism?
No, I was going to argue about basically. We were going to argue about like essentially like the frame games question.
But I mean, what does that mean? You're just like you're questioning like an all minorities, but like you like Jews or like the white Jews.
No.
You just think like it should be the white country, but the Ashkenazic Jews are no problem.
No, like can you have allies of other groups that like advance our goals? Like for instance, like can you like Frame Games wants to combat like the diversity industry, like he wants white identity politics to have like a voice. He wants to do something about anti-white racism. Well, at this point, like our goals are aligned. Like,
but it'd be like,
in a 30, 40-year time window, like there's really no deviation in our interests. You know what I'm saying?
Like Rodney's saying, at the end of the day, your wife and kid are not getting into the ethno state. We could work together and team up, but when the ethno state happens, your wife and kid aren't getting in.
Sure.
But
right.
That's like the frame. You're getting off at different stops on the stops on the train, and like
Kayla would say like there's no good Jews kind of thing.
I'm not sure what she. I mean, she doesn't really have a coherent.
Well, she was going to argue again. That's what she wanted to argue with me about, and she knows my position, and so presumably she would take the opposite.
Yeah, but so it would have just been the JQ. Where you would have been taking the affirmative, you would have been taking the.
What I would be saying is like we're in a position where we need to take allies wherever we can find them. Like someone like Stefan Molyneux, for instance. Stefan Molyneux is a libertarian. He wouldn't describe himself as an ethno-nationalist. He maybe dog whistles it sometimes, but he's like in general, like where we're at in the culture, like he's moving the ball, we're moving the ball together, like we're pulling in the same direction, and not for a long time will you realize he's on, he becomes on the other side of the rope. So let's pull together, like let's pull with Frame Games, like we're working in the same direction. Because the thing is, like they would look at it as like National Socialists like Kayla would look at it as, well, they'll infiltrate us and like take advantage of us. Like they'll manipulate the movement to benefit their ends. And, I would say, and my friend, I'm going to credit my friend Butterfly Flew Away brought this up. Okay. She said, why is it that the default position is always that the Jews are using us? Like, if a Jew is involved in the same thing as white people, like somehow the Jew is like getting, is manipulating white people. Like, why is it that white people can't use a Jew? Like, why can't we use frame game for our end? Like, why is that not a possibility? Like, what is this fucking loser perspective that like the Jews always got you? It's victim. It's some leftist victim mentality bullshit. And I'm tired of these whiny bitch 1488ers. They're just whiny bitches. They just cry about Jews.
They're not really right wing. I'm saying that, I mean, that's the point. Like, they're national socialists, or they're like extreme leftist, and it's just the demographics that a white nationalism has to be on the right wing. That the leftists, due to racial dynamics, if it was Frankfurtism, Frankfurt School in action, where so it's saying if you're maybe. Even I'm questioning your right wing credentials, because like you don't seem like a
dude. I came out of like constitutional conservatism. I'm not one of these leftists that flip flopped. I'm not one of these libertarians that flipped.
Values, proprietary, old.
Oh, I'm definitely family values. I'm definitely family values.
Yeah, but it's saying you don't speak properly, you don't guard your mouth. You're saying like you're degenerate.
This is by and large like a men's space where, guarding one's mouth is for being around children and women, Doovid. It just is. Like,
but it's old school conservative values that's saying.
Old school conservative values would say like men can speak frankly. Like when I curse, it's not so much because I don't have the words. I mean, I can speak whatever. It's an emotional display.
Yeah, but saying that's not conservative values. Like, saying that you can't control your emotions. You're like a liberal already.
I mean,
I'm saying it's factual. They're saying that you're like a Trumpian Republican. That like now you're but it's saying your behavior is not up to speed. You're like, oh, but like economically, constitutionally, and it's saying like you got to wash your mouth out with soap. You're not really a conservative yet. And you'd be like, no, I can trash talk and be emotional and sound just like a liberal on the left, and not
all right. The truth is,
conservative values, because like I'm a constitutionalist and ethnic, or all these different things. We're saying that these things mean different things to different people.
Do it because I curse once in a while does not discredit like what my like. It's a really really weak like argument. Let's be honest.
It's a pretty strong argument.
No, you're nitpicking. You're pill pulling.
You could say you're trying
to get to some truth, and you're on thin ice.
Well, I'm saying you could say you've always been pro-life. You've always been anti-homosexual.
Yes.
In that sense, and you've always, even like without getting into your personal life history, you've always been pro-marriage and pro-family values.
Yes.
And you've always been anti-degeneracy, or saying, but
yes.
But you still like going to like a bar or a disco or something. You're like a Republican.
No. I mean, there was a time, sure.
But, I haven't been. Take it one step further. Are you anti premarital sex? Take it one step further. Were you always anti-premarital sex?
Like, okay. So what I wish is that
you're saying to that level you weren't.
No. Okay, here's what I wish.
You were anti-gay, pro-family.
No. Here's what I wish.
You weren't premarital sex.
David, so for instance, like you had times in your life that you weren't always you didn't always live by your own standards. Am I correct?
Yeah, but I'm saying that sense I've always been extremely conservative.
But you did blow. You did a lot of blow. You were into gangster rap. You were going to these. If you were pushing guys that were spreading the message.
I was attempting to be a righteous person in an unrighteous world, and even the people like I was always sermonizing, and I was always bemoaning the fact that the world is in such a state that I have to act according to this degenerate behavior, even when I was somewhat degenerate.
David, as you've said yourself, okay, you've made this point a few times. Like it's hard to be righteous in an unrighteous world, and I guess my thing was I really wish that the culture was more righteous, and that basically there was this moral support in the sense of like if you engage in premarital sex, or like that women wouldn't give it to you, that you wouldn't be like you would be shamed. There wouldn't be like disco clubs where men and women could congregate, where alcohol was served freely till 2 a.m. That, when like the culture is such that you can have premarital sex without consequence. You know what I mean? And so it changes the sexual marketplace. I mean, where like, I've made plenty. I have sinned plenty.
So make to say like what Luke Ford would agree that Orthodox Jew in that sense is more conservative than you. That they openly say premarital sex is a bad thing. Don't engage in that behavior. Don't go to the bar. Don't go to the club. And so, at least in that sense, you're saying that's conservative value.
Sorry, I just want to jump in here. I just want to say I perfectly understand where Brundlefly just came from there on the last point. By the way, I've got a new mic. I'm testing it out. How do I sound?
You sound great. You sound great.
Thank you.
Babsy.
I'm glad to hear. I finally sound nice. But I think that where you are coming from, Brundle, is effectively the same place that, for instance, a lot of Islamic and some Jewish thinkers say when coming from the same place that they come from when they say things like women should be, let's say, dress according to modesty laws because if they don't, this adds, functionally speaking, whether you like it or not, just in terms of the kind of sexual realpolitik of the situation, regardless of how much restraint overall men try to express through this sort of soft inner control, men will ultimately become tempted. So that's the argument for things like, let's say, a hijab or a niqab or a burqa or something like that. So I totally understand the argument, the place that you're coming from, Brundlefly, and I agree. I think that having a society that is both supportive in a soft sense and supportive in a hard sense against becoming a bad person, because let's say if you grow up in like a big urban area in America, effectively it's much easier to go down the wrong path, and all the rewards are there for going down the wrong path, and none of the rewards are there for going down the right path. In fact, you can even be monetarily successful and wealthy and still be engaging in all sorts of debauchery and degeneracy, and even having that in some instances help you in a place like New York City. So it's really, I see where you're coming from, Brindle, both in terms of sexual politics and all other facets of life.
Yeah, like the thing is, one can advocate for something that like they don't always like again, like I'm sort of advocating. I've heard Greg Johnson say this before, like why sort of, laws against vice, like moral laws, like have validity, is that not everybody has like either the community support or the internal self-discipline to avoid like participation in various vices. Okay. And that there needs to be sort of guardrails set up for those people.
Well, okay. We're trying, just to keep on topic and,
for instance, like I would love, just real quick, can I just make this final point?
What is conservative values? What are real conservative values?
I mean, probably capital T tradition.
So it's not, okay, you could be a constitutionalist, you could be a fiscal conservative, you could be anti-immigration, but then, how many of the people on the right today, saying like, okay, you had Peter Thiel and, homosexuality is now accepted in the right also, in terms of traditional values. Who in the alt-right is actually proposing traditional values? Almost no one.
Well, yeah, dude, there are a lot of freaking problems. I feel like,
just the way you're speaking.
I feel like within the term conservative, right? The idea is to conserve. And what do you conserve? You conserve the tradition, which is the accumulation of knowledge, wisdom through generations of experience about like what works and what doesn't. Okay. Now, technology and different things like change, the environment may impact like what works and what doesn't, and you may have to tweak things a little bit, but you need to be able to, you can't just throw away like thousands of years of accumulated wisdom. And this is the problem in the West. Like we have rejected, we're in the process of like rejecting everything that we know about like what produces healthy, productive human beings, well-adjusted human beings. rejecting the family, rejecting gender roles, rejecting the idea of nation. You know,
accepting promiscuity.
accepting promiscuity, abandoning sort of
Or,
the social,
even
abandoning,
glorifying it.
right, abandoning the social compact between societal elites and workers.
There's a lot of things, so we just got to get it. Okay, this was a bad debate that we witnessed today. Neither side had great intellect. From some said it was just a destruction of Analytical Chick by BigCatKayla, but no one really learned anything. It wasn't an informative debate. No interesting topics were discussed. Nothing that people hadn't heard 100 times before. So it was basically just like a boxing match where BigCatKayla destroyed Analytic Chick.
Yeah, but I can't even say she destroyed. It wasn't even. I can't even give Big Cat that because she didn't even say anything. So it was honestly ask the female lesbian reform rabbi. I mean, that's what that session was.
Yeah, I don't think anyone learned anything from it.
No,
and
it wasn't interesting. The sound quality was bad.
Did anyone think anyone was going to learn anything from it?
Well, I thought they were when I was going to be on. I thought Kayla and I would have an interesting conversation. It's just Analytical Chick at the 11th hour decided to come home from the bar and fuck up.
Yeah, not and just be oblivious to it. Wait, setting
give me a quick rundown on what happened. On exactly what was what was her worst talking point?
Well, dude, I couldn't even pay attention because first of all, I was dealing with everybody in the chat calling me a Brundlekike. Brundlekike.
Well, you don't have to bring that degeneracy to my channel.
But this is what they were calling me.
Well, of course, that's what they're calling you. It's a National Socialist channel.
Yeah, but I'm not even Jewish.
You are close enough.
Whoa, Doovid. How am I Jewish?
That's what because you've already popped out a Jewish child, saying you didn't necessarily become a Jew, but saying you're saying you're Jewish beyond repair. I mean, you didn't convert, but saying that. I said that the first time we talked. Saying who are you to question my role in America? I don't have to assimilate. I'm a good American. I'm a Hasidic Jew. I believe in my Jewish tenets. And it's who are you to question?
Brundle, you've also, Doovid, you've told me that my wife isn't even a Jew, and therefore my son's not a Jew. Is it just Jew by convenience?
Because that's according to strict Orthodox law. I mean, things.
Well, that's the only law that matters, isn't it?
No.
Are Reform Jews real Jews?
I mean, yes. I mean, saying that yes and no. I mean, you have a high IQ. You're saying we're on the high IQ channel.
Dude, in my opinion, Reform Jews, from what I've seen, basically are engaged in heresy. It's not even Judaism.
Yeah, but I'm saying we're on the high IQ channel. Reform Jew, your wife is a Jew, yes, and not a Jew.
But you've told me she's a Jew and not a Jew. So what is it? I'm a Jew because she's a Jew, but not a Jew.
You're on the high IQ channel. There's not a definitive answer. There's different schools of thought, and according to some schools, she's not a Jew, and according to the House of Faust or whatever, she's a Jew and your kid's a Jew. So I mean, it doesn't matter what the Orthodox rabbis say. According to the people in that show,
but it's no question. It's no question. You're right about that.
Yeah, I'm saying just to try to be intellectually dishonest, like you said, God forbid your wife at first oh, I'm not Jewish. And it's saying, okay, you could play around with the words and both sides are true, but we've went over this countless times. We know the sectarianism. He's well, according to the Orthodox Jews, according, I'm not a Jew, but the right to return.
Dude, I'm trying to pull my way to
yeah, I'm saying you're
to
being
the fact that I'm not a Jew.
But I'm saying you're an ally to the Jew.
My Jew wife throws me out of the house to go talk to Richard Spencer.
Yeah, but saying you're already at some point you've already popped out an ethnically Jewish kid. That's your blood. So I mean, from now till forever, you could become God forbid a Jew hater, but you have a partially Jewish ethnically kid that's going to carry with you the rest of your life after death. Everybody's going to know when your soul entered your body and came into this earth. and you had relations with a Jewish woman and popped out a partially Jewish kid, that's permanent. That's not going back. You know, that's just factual.
According to Reform Jews.
Not according to, it's a factual element. Like saying you can't look in the mirror and accept the facts. In like,
You have
yes,
totally on the facts. These facts are in dispute, as you would acknowledge. These are not hard and fast facts, as you have said yourself. There are a lot of
different schools that look at it differently, but fact is,
fact. What is the fact? The fact is there's dispute over this question. True or false?
True.
Okay. So there's no definitive fact about like what is and what is not in regards to this question. There's dispute. True or false?
True.
Okay. So David, what do you think where do you think she went wrong in tonight's debate?
Well, I mean, just her ideas in general weren't well thought out. She basically stood no chance because her ideas are inconsistent. And just like, they should have just knocked her out after the go back to Israel. It was just like, okay, if what you're saying is true, why don't you just self-deport to Israel? And the debate should have been over. If this is what you believe, then self-deport to Israel, or else you're hypocritical. Like, what's the whole point of the argument? If you believe that you should be in Israel, why don't you just pack your bags and go there? Why are we arguing about what should be done in America? You have no stake in America. It's just a matter of time till you pack your bags and go to Israel.
I'm not going to Israel, but
I'm not saying you. I'm saying Analytic Chick. So at that point, the debate basically should have been over.
What, when they told her to go to Israel?
Yeah, just saying, like, what is she coherently arguing? She's saying, like, I don't think minorities should be in Israel, and Jews should be in Israel. I don't think that minorities should be in America. They need to close immigration and encourage minorities to leave America, and Jews should go to Israel. That's what she said.
Hold on, Analytical Chick is here. Do you want to get her on?
Not really.
I think so. It's relevant. You're doing a post game, and she's here.
I mean, but
come on, David.
She's gonna probably purposely try to get my channel shut down and saying even.
No.
Saying
well,
Google,
that's fair. Analytical
Google
Chick
right
is
now,
known
Google right
to
now is
flag
like warning me
channels.
about her message. Like right now, she's like yelling at me in the message, and Google's blocking her messages for me. I don't even have to block her; like Google's blocking it for me.
Yeah, I think it's sad. Analytical Chick. She's known to flag channels. She took down Sir Trayvon of Skittles. It was a great channel. I really like that guy. Honestly, AC, I really, I have to say, like, this whole, like, canceling, not canceling, hopping back in, terrible audio, the whole thing was just a mess.
Yeah, I mean, it was the weird position, of me that like you're
supporting National Socialist BigCatKayla.
Well, because Analytic is more against me than they are.
Yeah, I know.
For whatever reason, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, my biggest adversary currently on the web is this woman, Analytic. This avatar, fake person, whoever she is in real life, hiding under the name Analytic Chick. This is my single biggest adversary troll that I have on the web.
I think honestly,
the National Socialists don't troll me. I don't hear them spending their time like attacking me. They don't talk about me behind my back.
The interesting thing, David, is when it comes to Analytical Chick is the only time I've ever seen a woman act this way towards another guy, like towards a guy, is like when they're interested. Like, I'm not sure why she can't just come out and say, like,
stupid, like,
David, I'm into you.
I don't know.
Clearly something there.
I don't think it's a good match, and I don't know.
Well, I don't think it's a good match either. I think
I don't know why
you're too good for that. She's only 10% Jewish, dude. I mean, you're a full half.
Yeah, I mean, she's older than me, and like, whatever the case is, like, I don't know why she's trolling me. So it's just a weird situation where, like, every time I've been on a stream on your channel a few times with BigCatKayla, the time with Red Elephants, and we were basically friendly. And like, I've appeared in the chat in her show a few times, and she's read my chat. She's always been friendly to me, as opposed to Analytic, who has always been unfriendly to me.
Yeah, I wish she would be friendly to you, honestly.
And I mean, I don't care. I guess I'll put in the chat. I might have to delete the stream, and if Analytic wants to come on, but she's going to come onto my own channel to try to attack me and yell at me. It doesn't even make any sense. And that I even have to have this, just saying like, okay, yeah, I have a troll.
I mean, I think honestly, I think she's attracted to how steadfast you are in your opinions and that you don't back down in the face of criticism.
I don't know. You mean it's just pure speculation? So it
is speculation. I'm just my own knowledge of the nature of women.
I'm generally
Analytical Chick. Hail Analytical Chick. Honestly, Analytical Chick. That was. You went into a hostile environment. A very hostile one. AC, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Keep going.
It was a very hostile environment. I mean, they were calling me the K word. They were calling you worse. BigCatKayla had.
I didn't have the side chat open. Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. If I was telling somebody, I was like, if I was going to be on there, I was going to leave the chat off. But
I was having so many issues with my computer.
Yeah.
I didn't dare open an extra window. Because what happened was, after all these issues where I've had with the little computer, like it literally won't turn on. This one, I don't know if you're hearing the clicking noise. Normally, when I use this computer, even if I use the plug-in mic, people hear a clicking noise. And when I finally got that one to work, in the past, that's when I stopped using this one.
Yeah. So look, I will say this, that like.
And then my internet like went out and I had to reboot my modem.
Yeah.
And that happened like just as we were about to go live. And I'm like thinking like, they are gonna be so pissed. I'm gonna come back in. I figured you were gonna be on in my place already. And actually like my internet came back up and it was like just as they were like, so we're here with BigCatKayla, and I was just like, I'm here. Like,
yeah, they were I don't know. See, that thing is like, it was supposed to be a debate, but it like turned into like Ask the Jewess. Like
a little bit, yeah.
She didn't say anything other than like periodically like grandstanding about, I don't even know. Like Pat Little says whatever she says better, and I don't even like.
I mean, she was. It was an issue of like being off topic, and the moderator wasn't really like. That's kind of a moderator's job, is to like keep you on topic. And I felt like he wasn't really keeping us on topic because he was obviously on her side. But and I'm ADHD, so like it's easy for me to go off topic. And then at one point we were off topic and she was like, "Oh, how did we get here?" And I'm like, "I don't even know." I'm like, "We're here." But I mean,
how much did you have to drink before that show?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I just came home. I was drinking like water
from
being out of the house.
At the bar.
No.
I don't know. I think I don't know. Like, to me, like that was, like, you're right. I mean, in some sense, like the moderator was not like keeping that. Like the fact is like Kayla was sitting there just asking questions, like it was a comfy tangent. You know what I'm saying? Like a hostile, comfy tangent.
Well, and when I asked her questions, it was really hard to get answers out of her. Like, I had to ask her a few times to get her to, like, explain her version of the ethno-states. Which, in the end, was compatible with civic nationalism.
Right. She's an 80%. It's funny. You saw in the chat, I was wondering what she was going to say, because, remember, like, my first suggestion for what her and I were going to talk about, if you, because I'm not a civic nationalist, right, was going to be the question of like the 100% ethno-state versus the 80% ethno-state. And she goes, I don't even believe in the 100% ethno-state. I think it's a pipe dream. So if she believes in an 80% ethno-state, then like you're gonna have to make a lot
And
of
that's
compromises.
compatible with my version of civic nationalism.
Right, like
Because
she would.
if we actually started kicking out all the illegals, and if whites and she didn't agree with me about whites having babies. But we've had this discussion on the like little Gewalt right channels. And I mean, somebody said, maybe it was even you, to like do it about how, Jewish people, they'll have, my rabbi's up to like 7 or 8 kids now. I've lost count. I think he had 6 the last time I babysat them.
Ooh.
And then he had another one, and I think like I saw it like on Purim that year, and he hasn't had me like babysit for him or anything in like 3 years, 2 or 3 years. But they just had another one because he emailed me bris notification, and for all I know, they could have had a girl in between too.
Oh wait, like is that like an event? Like you go to Bris's, like you see weenies chopped?
I mean, generally, nobody can really see anything. I mean,
Do you peek? Do you peek?
Well, there's between all the people around, and the parents are generally around the kid. So like, I've never been anywhere where I could see it.
Right.
But I mean,
if you're like an important person in the community, you might be standing. The women are usually on the opposite side, so usually the men and women are in completely different sections, and the circumcision takes place on the men's side. But like the rabbis and the important people from the community are more likely to be right there up front and see what's happening. And even like to hold it.
Depends.
So if you're like a wealthy, prominent person from the community,
you get to hold it.
Well, hold the baby or something. Like, I mean, usually like it'd be the grandfather.
If you're like the Jewish
the
equivalent
father.
of like the godparent.
When there's like a distribution of honors where like you'll carry the baby into the room, or they'll hand it off, or you'll say a blessing. But like, yeah, I mean, the women wouldn't see it like from a very far distance, and
it depends.
How popular. But if you're an important man in the community, you might be right there looking at it.
Like in some cases, if you were like the mother or like the aunt
that's
or
the
something of the child,
anti-degeneracy. Saying like this baby is not going to be a degenerate. Like we're clipping his foreskin in front of everybody.
Well,
this kid will not be a degenerate.
What I was gonna say.
Is that what that's about?
What I was gonna say.
Yeah, but you might have had it done surgically in a hospital or whatever. But I'm saying as a ceremony where it's saying like my kid is not going to be a degenerate. He is not going to be a scumbag like everybody else. He is going to obey the Torah. He's going to follow the law, and I want everybody to see it.
But what I was gonna say is like, I've been to like maybe 5 brises. So
I've been to like hundreds.
Do you ever see like?
Do
you ever see like big foreskins and small foreskins?
But what I was gonna say before Doovid interrupted me, but so some of them I've been to, they were like in a shul, so I was in the women's section. But in other ones, they were like in a community room, and then everybody ate right after. So like in the ones that were in a community room, the women aren't necessarily, in a separate area. So in theory, I could have seen, but I mean, usually there's so many people, only a handful of people are going to be able to be seen. And yeah, I mean, Doovid is correct that like normally those are going to be the men. The exception might be like the mothers. Like I've been at a few that were in a community room and the mother was like standing right there. So the mother would have been able to see, and like, let's say my sister was Jewish and she had a boy, which neither is true. And I'm not even on speaking terms with my sister. But in theory, if I had actually been raised Jewish and my sister had a boy, I might have been like right there because, the relatives are generally pretty close. But I mean, yeah, it depends. But yeah, they do it in front of everybody. But like I said, there's so many people you can't really see. Like usually I've been nowhere near it where, I mean, you have all the relatives standing around and stuff, and you have all these rabbis standing around. So like the random person at the
Alright.
bris is not going to be able to
It's like
see.
right
That's
after,
great. Can we not?
right after the
my
procedure
thing
takes
hurts
place.
thinking about this. Can we
Right
move on?
after the procedure takes place, the whole congregation chants together that the baby should enter a life of Torah, good deeds, and the wedding canopy. So I'm saying like we were talking about conservative values before and the forbidding of premarital sex. So to say that it's even in the prayers of the thing. Like this kid is not going to have premarital sex. This kid is going to be a good person, have a good life. And that's why it's a public ritual. I mean, it's not like a
So, David, since we know that you
But
go
just
to a
understand,
reform shul,
it is like a public
do they
castration.
do
to
they
some
do this
extent.
at the reform shuls too, or just the Orthodox shuls?
I go to all types of shuls. And I put
No,
on my
I know
YouTube
you
page,
mostly go to a reform place.
the one I put on my YouTube page downtown is the only synagogue in Detroit. It historically was conservative. Now it's egalitarian. They hired a female reform rabbi.
Wait, why? I get a question. They let
But
you
no, man,
use,
I go
they
to
let you
all types
use a
of shuls.
smartphone. They let you use a smartphone phone on the Sabbath inside the synagogue.
At the downtown synagogue.
So they're like ultra reform.
Yeah,
There are no fucking rules.
but it's the only synagogue in Detroit.
Really?
Yeah, but you don't live in Detroit. You
I
live
thought
in
you go to
like,
all
South
time. I thought you
Country.
go to all kinds of.
Well, I was saying really it's before sundown. Like for anyone who knows the Jewish law, they make their Sabbath Friday night services technically before sundown. So it's not actually Sabbath when I go there.
So that you can drive there.
Yeah, I mean, but I go to all the synagogues. I was in Brooklyn. I studied. I went to
So you-
synagogue.
but
There was
you
a circumcision
claim-
a
you
few times a week.
claim-
I went to hundreds of circumcisions.
David, you claimed on a live stream, you claimed that you go to a Young Israel because that's the only one in walking distance. And now you're admitting what I've already found out because I've been on your Facebook page. I've seen all your posts on your Facebook page. You have a ton of posts from this downtown place.
Look, I
wasn't
go
gonna
there
give
Friday night in the summer when the sundown, because Detroit, like sundown's not till like 10 o'clock. So I could go to the services and the meal and get home Friday before sundown.
Do you light candles and bring in the Sabbath, or you just go to a Sabbath service? 'Cause I don't actually
I haven't
know.
even led the
When a man
service.
goes to the Sabbath service, according to the halacha, when a man goes to the Sabbath service, he brings on the Sabbath upon himself in the Sabbath Marav prayers.
Well, I'm saying you want to have like an Ask the Rabbi stream. I know these halachas, and I mean your person.
Yeah, except you lie.
I mean, so you say, but I'm saying like I mean,
You can't even look at the camera because you're
Analytical Chick. Analytical Chick. Are you cyber stalking David?
well, I do have her name. I do have her name in the title. Like I did
I'm
let
not
her
the
on.
only one who looked at his
I did
Facebook.
let her on the stream because like her name is in the title of this stream, but basically you come on. I'm saying you want like a halachic analysis of what I do. I could give that to you, but I mean we're talking about the ethnic civic nationalism and the debate you just had, and now you want to ask me like complicated questions about.
Wait, David's
No, I asked
taking-
you a
taking
not
in Sabbath.
complicated question.
You're saying like what do you have?
that you should know. Because as you like to point out, I'm just a fucking convert. As you like to point out all the time.
Spicy.
Well, I mean, you got to wash your mouth out with soap.
Anyway, as you like to point out, I'm just emphasize just a convert.
I don't think I've ever used the word just.
So
I
here
said
I am.
I've made the
just
expression that I have mercy upon you
just
because you're an
convert.
orphan. I never used. I don't. You have to look. I don't think I ever used the word
Oh, I
just.
never call you an orphan, except that you do.
Yeah, I'm saying that.
Well, he
you-
says God
Absolutely
forbid.
do,
Well, he says God forbid first, so it's fair game. He's
yeah,
just
no, man,
he's-
because
God
saying
forbid
you
you're an
have a
orphan.
certain amount of mercy, and it's a mitzvah to have mercy upon the orphan. It's a mitzvah
God
to have
forbid
mercy.
you're
To have a
an
mercy
but you know.
upon a
What
convert.
does that mean?
And I never said just a convert. If you're, if you're a convert and it's legitimate, you're just as Jewish as anybody else. But I'm saying it's a mitzvah to be nice to a convert. It's a mitzvah to have mercy upon an orphan.
Is that why you were so kind to Luke in the comments of his videos?
That's why I was generally so kind to Luke. I wasn't so kind to him in the fact, like, I did him a favor. I've been saying because he's a Jew, I'm required to rebuke him.
You
If
did
he
him a
wasn't-
favor by being downright nasty to him in his comments.
Well, because
Well,
I'm, I'm rebuking
AC,
him for
as a
being
Jew, why have you not rebuked Luke?
for being a, she does rebuke him actually. Like AC is very good at
Hey,
rebuking
look at
Luke.
that. Even Doomit is backing me up on this
Yeah,
one.
because she's like, Luke, no one's ever going to want to marry you. You're a degenerate. And like, so she's like straight up and honest with him. And actually, to some extent, that's giving him the full respect he deserves as a Jew. Because if he wasn't a Jew, it'd be like, okay, who cares? Whatever. That's not applicable. But he's saying like, Luke, you're a Jew. You can't be a degenerate like this. No one's ever going to marry you. Whatever.
I'm
So at
not
least,
saying no. Actually, I'm not saying no one will ever marry him. I'm saying he's not going to be able to attract a woman who meets the standards that he wants to put forth. If he wanted to not be alone, he would have to lower his standards, and he doesn't want to, because he cares more about what other people think than like to actually not be alone. As much as I'm pretty sure he's lonely.
but I'm saying, would you when you speak to Luke like that, it's a Jew thing where you're speaking to him as your fellow Jew. Because if it was like someone else, you might not speak so intimately.
All right, I'm gonna have to say goodnight to you guys. AC, I just want to say, I was really disappointed in how that debate went. You basically argued ethno-nationalism as a civnat. As Doovid, can you make your case? I mean, I kind of agreed with exactly your analysis, so why don't you sum it up after I go? Babs, nice to talk to you. AC, nice to talk to you. Okay, good night, fellas. And lady.
Okay.
Oh, fell. Okay.
We got 31 people watching. If you want,
Sum up whatever he told you to sum up, because I want to leave.
Well, I basically said, like, as a Jew, you can't be an ethnic nationalist because we're a minority, and so like that was the debate where you seemed like you said Jews should be in Israel, and then it was like, well, if that's the case, why don't you pack up your bags and go to Israel? And so you were trying to side like, oh, you're basically an ethno-nationalist. You didn't make it clear what the difference between a civic nationalist and ethnic nationalist. And I could say, like, as a multiculturalist, I could argue my multiculturalism within a civic framework and saying, okay, there's a civic understanding of what it means to be an American, and it doesn't matter whether you're white, black, Chinese, Hindu, Mexican, you could be any religion, you could be Muslim, Christian, as long as you've conformed to the Constitution and the certain civic understanding of what it means to be an American. I don't care what you are, but you seem to have some. Yeah, I mean, you seem to be basically also arguing ethnic nationalism, and so you're losing on two tiers. One, because you're agreeing with the person you're debating, and two, because as a Jew, how can you be an ethnic nationalist? Because like, by definition, if you're an ethnic nationalist, you're admitting that you don't belong here.
That's not what I said. I said that I believe that we needed a really strict review process, and if that means that many of the people who get let in are white, then so be it. And in that, and that I believe many of the people who got in a strict review process would be more like, we would end up bringing in more whites. I think that Jews would also do well in a strict review process, but
as a civic nationalist, you could care less whether America becomes minority white. As long as the people conform to your understanding of what it means to be an American, you don't care what they are.
I think I acknowledged that I didn't think that would happen if there was a strict review process. That's the difference between me and you. You are like, let's proud America, let's bring in all these morons who are going to vote for communism. And I'm saying strict review process. We have not had that. If we had that, we wouldn't have the kind of the immigration that we've had has been detrimental to the U.S. We haven't had letting in illegals and then just giving them amnesty. That's not civic nationalism. They haven't been reviewed. That, you know, we used to have civic nationalism, and when you start giving people amnesty and then, you know, incentivizing them and luring them here and giving them welfare, you know, that's not civic nationalism.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that was
These
the problem
people
with
don't
the debate.
have an American
is
mindset.
all you did was really discuss what you agree about, and the only thing you seem to disagree about was the JQ. So, you know, but basically you spent the whole show basically agreeing with her about anti-immigrants and you know, the problems with Muslims and you know, different minorities, and you didn't actually make a positive case for what you considered civic nationalism, and you spent the majority of the time just agreeing with her.
I mean, I might
If that was your strategy, because you're on like this channel that is majority national socialist, and like, you know,
I mean, I might have agreed with her to some extent. Maybe I did agree with, but like, we started off the debate because like I had told her that I'm not like a hardcore civ nat. Like, I do kind of straddle civic nationalism and ethno-nationalism because, like, I definitely see that a case for white people are generally going to be the better choice for immigrants, as opposed to, you know, I mean, most Hispanics, most.
Yeah, but saying that's basically irrelevant because white people are only like 10% of the world
Muslims are
population.
incompatible with the West.
You're saying
They're
but
especially the United States.
Factually,
because their doctrine is
whites are such a minority of the world population, and there's not a huge amount of white people that are trying to get here. I'm saying statistically, I went over with Brundle, the Department of Homeland Security statistics.
Yeah, because everybody knows they can't come. Everybody. Do you know how many people I've talked to from Europe online who want to come here, and they're like, they know that they cannot get in. They know that whites are getting deported and Hispanics are not. They know this, but I don't really want to be on a string.
Generally, the countries, you know, besides for like Ukraine and Russia, most of the European countries, there's less people trying to come to America than are allowed. There's thousands of open visas that Europeans could be coming to America. They don't really want to. Even countries like France, you know, there's not a huge desire of French, and even like the people from Europe that are European coming to America, and a lot of those are actually Muslims and Indians that are moving from Europe to America. So he's saying that there's not a huge interest in whites to come to America, and population-wise, whites are, you know, what, like 10% of the world's population anyways. So he's saying you're not going to immigrate, you're not going to be able to skew immigration towards white people, but for two reasons, because whites generally aren't that interested in coming here, and the, you know, whites are a minority of the world's population. So I mean, if you like to that, like, it just didn't seem like there was any logic behind what you were saying. You're saying like you want to have pro-European based immigration or try to entice Europeans to want to come to America, but they don't want to come here, and there's not that many of them anyways. I guess she bounced. Are you there, Babs?
Yes, I am. She left. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
so
I mean, she just wanted to talk to Brundle anyways, and I mean, just, you know, there's not too much logic behind what she's saying, and you know, so basically, you know, it was like half just bashing dark-skinned people and bashing Muslims and bashing Mexicans and bashing immigrants. That, you know, basically the stream, you know, so half of it was Analytic and BigCatKayla agreeing and just having like a bash fest on minorities. And you know, the other quarter was basically incoherent. It wasn't enough like research or factual basis to really understand what they were getting at. And the other quarter was arguing about the JQ, where BigCatKayla was basically saying like, you know, she thinks that Jews are just as bad as Muslims or Mexicans. Like, you know, saying like, you know, Analytic Chick's like, yeah, I agree. We need to, you know, God forbid, get rid of the Mexicans. We need to get rid of the Muslims. We got to stop those people from coming over. I don't mind if more Europeans come here. And BigCatKayla is, well, I feel the same way about the you know, the Africans and Mexicans. and other people, the Jews also. So the only point of contention basically in the whole debate was Jews. Where they agreed on everything about whether Jews are good for America or Israel is good relations for America, and everything else they agreed about. You didn't even watch it?
Yeah, I didn't get to watch all of it, but I'm going to after the stream. But I mean, that pretty much follows. That's generally how these things play out, and that's pretty much how I expected it to play out.
Pretty boring and uninteresting. That's like there wasn't much content there, and so when it came down to it. In Analytical Chick, she just doesn't have a coherent worldview, and so it wasn't interesting, and so just to come on and like to my channel and try to explain to Brundle for like 10 minutes how circumcisions work, and then when I asked her serious questions about the topic at hand, she ran away, and then wants to attack me about my Jewish practices.
Well, I mean, yeah.
You there? You're not coming through. If you're
sorry. I just realized that I was talking into a muted microphone. Yeah. Well, anyway, I mean, this seems largely to be just kind of like silliness. But I mean, what was to be expected of sort of like the slap fight, the AC, and like maybe I thought it was going to be more entertaining than this, if anything. But it's just like
it wasn't even entertaining. And then like in the chat. You got people like putting swastikas and saying basically everything that Analytic was saying about minorities. People in the chat were basically saying about Jews, but they were saying far worse than she's saying.
Yeah.
And it's like to me, like even you're basically incoherent because it's like you should have packed up and went to Israel like years ago. What are you still doing here?
Because why would I do it in a manner that doesn't benefit me? Why wouldn't I do it in a manner why wouldn't I do it in a manner that's well thought out and well planned out and well executed?
Because you can't well think it out and plan. Like saying, I know the people who go to Israel, like I do go to Young Israel near my house. I know hundreds of people who served in the IDF, or I know tens of people right now, kids that are joining the IDF, and the rabbis come and they make their pitches and say, it's a fact, your life is going to be worse. You're going to Israel, your standard of living is going to drop in half instantly. You're giving up a lot. If you believe in what you're saying, you're not going to be able to plot out some vision where you move to Israel as a champion. It's because you believe in
it's a lot less about standard of living, and I don't want to be a champion, but it's a lot about, like, if I told you details about my personal life, you'd probably understand more. But it's just like due to a lot of factors surrounding my personal life and just the position where I am in just several sort of personal endeavors that I'm going on with.
Yeah, unlikely, because I'm saying it's like people.
No, I mean, listen.
People are faking like some connection to Israel. Basically, you have zero connection to Israel.
I mean, except for like the
potentially the right of
the DNA, the religion that's been passed down, and the language that's been passed down from my family. I have all sorts of like literally literature like right over there. There's like Sefer Torah like hanging in my house, even though my family's been like atheists for several generations. I mean, you can say no connection all you like, but I mean, whatever. You're just speaking falsehoods.
I think
my connection.
Most Israelis would agree.
I've been deracinated, but that's what happens through things like galut and colonialism and secularism, etc., etc. That's why we should avoid these things, because yes, I have been stripped of what could be mine, but I don't think that should be used as like a point of needling, you know.
Well, yeah, because it means you don't have a coherent worldview for who you are, what your position in America is. In your positions, basically, like, I'm going to go to Israel eventually anyways, even though you're probably not. There's almost no chance that you're going to do it. And so you have a coherent...
I mean, that's not even true. I've already set up... that's not even true. I've already set up, like, the paperwork and whatnot. I've already got the process partially underway, so I'm absolutely going to do it. Don't make assumptions. And I'm not going to end up moving back to America. I mean, I just think that you fail to...
I don't buy it. I'm saying, like, I really just don't buy it. I mean, you could say...
I mean, you can not buy it all you like. I mean, you're in a dour mood, and I mean, you can say what you like.
I'm not in a dour mood.
Criticize me.
People that have done it. And, like, I did it. I know a lot of people that are doing it. You don't sound like a person...
Is what you're doing conducive? Is what you're doing conducive or generative in any way, or are you just being a dick?
Well, I want to have the point of having a coherent.
No, what's the point, Doovid? What's the point
of having a coherent worldview?
Yes, I agree. Having a coherent worldview is better, and I don't have a coherent worldview. So then what? What's the point of even pointing this out and needling this on me? I mean, first of all, you don't even know that much about my worldview, and second of all, like I'm quite young. I'm figuring things out for myself. I haven't really had older figures in my life, and yeah, you could say, oh well, why haven't you done this, and why haven't you done that, and why haven't you done this? But you know, everyone's on their own individual path of their journey, and I think that frankly, you acting in this manner is kind of unproductive and just rude and kind of unnecessary. You know, it's like we're all in the you know, struggle together or whatever. It's like, yeah, I'm a terrible person in a lot of ways, but it's like I'm trying to be better. So shit.
Well, I mean, good for you. But I think so. I mean, help develop a coherent worldview, and
yeah, that's what I'm working on. Sorry, go ahead.
You know, saying like, you know, what just this kind of like, oh, like, you know, like I'm really Israeli, or like I'm gonna have my lot in Israel, and you know, thing like, in trying to, you're saying like that's why multiculturalism, like as a Jew in America, you know, you're part of the coalition of minorities. You got to think about that, and you know, your stake in America, and ethnic nationalism, and people are just, you know, half here, half there, and you know, partially have their foot in a bunch of doors. And because they haven't thought things through, so it's good to think things through, and you know, that's why the ethnic versus civic nationalism. By definition, you can't be a Jew in America and be an ethnic nationalist. I mean, you'll agree on that.
Yeah, but I don't think that.
I mean, there might be.
Well, I mean, it depends what you consider as such. What do you mean by nationalist? Do you mean separatist? Do you mean identitarian? Like, specify. Like, what do you mean when you say that? Like, I can see how, I mean, you could say that there are lots of, quote, Jewish nationalists and, quote, black nationalists in America. And this is what you talk about when you talk about multicultural conservatism meeting in the public square.
Well, I mean, ethnic nationalism in the sense that BigCatKayla was arguing it.
Like autonomy and self-determination, naturally, of course.
You can't be a Jew and agree with her.
No, I mean, unless you are voluntarily,
self-deport.
Repatriating.
You know, you're saying like, I agree with you, and I'm going to self-deport and pick up and move to Israel.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying like your kind of like game plan is saying like, okay, if you're going to agree with BigCatKayla, you should have moved to Israel a long time ago, and saying if your only intention to move to Israel is not because you believe in the Zionist project, or because you're scared, or you need a place, or you know, whatever understanding as an American Jew you have of it, but to think about okay, there's a rise of ethnic nationalism across America, and as a Jew. Most Jews are worried about that. You know, from the Republican to Democrat, all major Jewish organizations, as Luke Ford points out every single show, basically support amnesty, support immigration, support multiculturalism. So when you know, Halsey, Frame Game, whoever is, you know, arguing like, as a Jew, I don't support multiculturalism, you have to analyze it, like, you know, saying, so either you don't really appreciate your Jewish identity, or you haven't thought these issues through, or you have an incoherent, you know, not connection.
I mean, I have an incoherent worldview, because an incoherent worldview is what's brought on by the complex factors that are caused by the fact that you have me, like this Middle Eastern guy who's been raised in sort of like a culture that's a cosmopolitan culture, or sort of a culture that draws wisdom from all traditions, but sort of kind of Western and Enlightenment skewing, but with the kind of a diasporic ideological outlook. You have me, and then I'm stuck in New York City and London and places like that are cities in the West. So I mean, there are naturally going to be incoherencies, simply because this is the sort of absurd, incoherent nature of the modern world. I don't think that it's completely incoherent, though, for someone to just point out the fact that, like, if you look at like the works of someone like, I mean, Putnam is the most obvious oft-cited example, but there have been similar results replicated since then. I had a few of those pulled up earlier on my desktop, but the point is, things like quote unquote multiculturalism, diversity, pluralism, etc., when they're not bound together by like an explicit project or an explicit framework, like the millet system under the Ottoman Empire, what's been shown statistically speaking, and you're not arguing with me, you're arguing with Putnam if you argue with this, is that there is a reduction in social capital, even when like quote unquote diversity education classes are taken. So, and this is something that I noticed growing up in a place like New York City, is the atomization, the loss of social capital, as it were, because I I was not raised in a community. I was not raised in a tradition. And you were saying earlier that, oh, I'm probably not going to move to Israel, so I should just get ready to embrace my position in the multicultural coalition of America. I see, if, quote, multiculturalism, insofar as multiculturalism creates people who don't belong to any culture, who are truly atomized, such as myself, and that has not made me happy, and generates things like atheism and disconnect from ancestral tradition. Why would I wish for more people to be happy, for more people not to be happy, according to things like Putnam? The only way that people can be happy in, quote, multiculturalism, as I see it, is under this multicultural conservative model that you speak of, wherein communities and social cohesion and stuff like that is to some degree preserved.
Yeah, and that's the why people always bring up Kevin McDonald in the clash of self-interest or group interest, and so you have to decipher what is the current state of truth, what's the current state of reality, and how are you going to recognize that our self-interest are in conflict with other people's self-interest, but still believe in a future that could benefit everybody, even though at some level there are these direct clashes, such as the immigration debate, is the big one right now. And, the majority of people, our self-interest is opposite the majority of Americans right now. So it's hard to come up with, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to deal with it? And it requires quite a bit of thought and have these debates. And, that's why this debate was pretty uninteresting, because it's basically Analytic agreeing with BigCatKayla. And I don't know. I mean, someone want to jump in on this? I mean, there's 20 some people watching. I don't know if me and Babs are going to go anywhere. It's not too interesting.
Yeah, there's not much more to say about the stream. I haven't seen it. I'm going to watch it after this.
I mean,
I think we've covered it pretty much.
Yeah, I'm saying I'm not. What are we concerned about? Ethnic nationalism. I'm not really concerned. I'm thinking about it, and you see what happens at the ballot box and foul politics, and I'm more concerned with why, with Analytic Chick being my troll. So it's just kind of concerning to me. Why is this woman trolling me? And okay, I could see that. Okay, I put myself out there. I have a YouTube page. I'm speaking all these things. That's the nature of how it goes. That people are going to troll me, and she happens to be one of my trolls. It's too bad. We'd have to get a Goy on the channel to really take this conversation any further. But I don't think anyone's really interested in coming on this. And that's where you have the the white people. They need a Jew just to speak to about it, and saying no, I mean, I'm a Jew, I'm a minority. I can't change that. It's a fact that my group interest is my group interest. When I look in a mirror and I see myself, whether I tried to hide being a Jew, I know that's who I am. And I'm a multiculturalist. I cry for immigrants and for the oppressed and the weak. And I could hear BigCatKayla, and it's okay, she's been cordial and nice to me, but basically her philosophy is abhorrent to me. To me, I despise racism. I look at all people equally and the same. And just hearing people give to me what would, I don't would call people racist, but racial arguments, to me it's just disgusting. And but that's the public debate on the scene right now. And I don't know. I mean, if I'm just going to sign off, and this was probably a pretty low quality stream, I might even delete it because it was pretty low quality. But anyone want to come on this and share some insight, get in front of this crowd here? You got 20, 30 people watching. Anyone want to get in front of this crowd? I'm probably going to delete the stream just because it's just degeneracy, just the topic of it. And these two women hiding under avatars and fake names, and Brundle, uncontrollable degeneracy. I'm looking at the chat. Basically, no one has any logic or reason behind anything they're saying. It's just pure degeneracy. It's kind of no one's got anything to add to this. I mean, I guess it's kind of pointless for a Goy to try to come on and to the Doooovidism stream and try to
Hello, Ichi.
This is now a Luciferian stream.
Well, I mean, you could be a Luciferian on my stream, and that's fine. You're in my multiculturalism, but
No, man, planting the flag. I am planting the flagpole. Boom. Luciferianism.
You know, and like I know your opinions, and like you know, I don't mind people having opinions. I don't believe in censorship, and I think it's better to express it. But like I grew up pretty liberal, and to me, just like anything that even you know schmecks smells of racism is disgusting to me. And even to see Jews on it, and I don't need to argue with every Jew and try to be like, okay, like you're a Jew, you should be a multiculturalist. I've been here, I've had this argument so many different times, and looked at the statistics, and I can just say, like, you know, generally what I'm saying is incoherent, is compatible with majority Jewish opinion. You know, like Jews were a minority, and we're going to be in direct conflict with whites on this. Although I value my stake in America, and if we lose this battle, I'm going to be a good American and respect the law. You know, maybe if people were being oppressed, a lot of Jews, you know, for example, are breaking the law and trying to help Mexicans, and you know, breaking up families. And I don't know, like, you know, I think back like to slavery. If I was a good person in the time of slavery, would I have broken the law and
Wait
tried
a second. Illegal immigration is not. It's not the same thing as not more like the same as illegal immigration.
Yeah, but there's multiple issues. So I'm saying, but I mean, generally, you know, like Luke Ford constantly says, almost all, or you know, as far as I know, every single major Jewish organization not only supports legal immigration, but supports amnesty for illegal immigrants.
I have a question.
And to you, that probably makes sense. I mean, you could just see like, okay, if you were a Jew, you would probably think that way too. You just think like if you put your you know head into the eye of a minority, the eye of a Jew, and you'd be like, yeah, it's probably good for Jews to you have more minorities here. It makes sense. And it's saying, okay, I'm not trying to cause a revolution in America, and I think it's good for people.
Okay, I already know this. You've gone over this with me. It's okay. I have a question though. What do you think is more important, morals or laws?
I go with the with a lot of things they're descriptive, not prescriptive, and a lot of times laws are descriptive, not prescriptive, as where morals are more prescriptive. So, you know, to me, I like, you know, idealistic morals and ethics, and laws are more descriptive about about the current state of humanity and what we're capable of doing and capable of living by, is where morals are more idealistic, and a lot of times not you know, man isn't capable of living up to the morals.
Which is more important, rules or morals?
I mean, as I would probably say morals to me, but I mean, you have to analyze each, you know, I take things issue by issue. So I'm not going to make like a blank statement that you know, morals supersede rules in all circumstance, because to me morals are more important, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you could break rules just because morals are more important.
If a rule violated one of your morals, which would you violate first?
I have to play it situation by situation. So I know here in Detroit, you're saying people are getting arrested, people are camping outside of ICE, people are you know, protesting, and you know, they're, you know, so to say, their morals are superseding the rules. The rules of the country are these people are getting deported, and majority of Jews and you know, certainly Detroiters think that that's immoral, and we're protesting the rules.
Wait a second.
I mean, not we collectively. I haven't been to one of those protests, but I see largely that's what's happening in my area right now.
Are you telling me that you're supporting illegal immigration?
I'm telling like that there's protests every day about these issues, about people being deported, and these are people I go to synagogue with. These are people I know. Like I get the invites to Facebook, I see it across my feed. Like this is news, major news, and you know, probably by you too. And I don't. I've been to a handful of protests. It's not my style. I'm not very political in that sense. Like I follow politics, but like I'm not really like a go to protest kind of person, or that directly involved in politics. I'm more a side intellectual.
When you said something about these protests and people protesting them and getting upset, you used the word "we," which suggested that you believe that one ought to protect illegal immigrants. Am I reading that correctly?
That would be my moral leaning, and I use we collectively, like we, like Jews, or we, my congregation, or my friends. That I would put myself in the we, even though I'm not going to these protests. My moral, I'm like on the moral side. Like, I don't like seeing people deported. I like to have mercy upon people. I like to look and believe in the common, the potential and ability of people to be good.
Yeah, I just want to be sure that I understand this. You're telling me that you support illegal immigration.
No, I'm saying, you're saying once they're here, I say that it's different, but saying I don't support deportations and saying I support illegal immigration. I'm a law and order kind of guy. I don't support breaking the law, although.
But they are breaking the law.
Yeah, so in generally, I'm favor mercy. So it's saying the punishment has to fit the crime, and you're breaking up families, or what's going on right now. Like, generally, I would like to be merciful, and I went over the Pew survey data with Brundle earlier today,
Right.
and we're talking about, okay, is allowing people amnesty
okay. No, it's
justifying saying the person broke the law, and you're saying they could get away with it, and that's a bad thing, and saying no, I'm not saying that illegal immigration is good. I'm just saying my bent is towards mercy, and once they're already here,
your bent is towards
to them as opposed to deport them.
Yeah, your bend is towards breaking the law. Yeah.
No, that's
you're not law and order at all.
I'm law and order, and there's a difference between having mercy on a criminal and supporting and aiding and abetting a criminal.
Yeah, so you support breaking the law.
No, that's not what I said.
But de facto, that is the case, though.
You're making that argument,
and
I put up the Pew survey on the data, about that exact question.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm going to check I just want to see what chat has to say. I want to see if they see this as well, because
me and Brundle discussed this exact data, and we looked at the data.
No, it's not about the
Democrat and Republicans. Even Republicans generally are divided on this issue.
No, dude, but it's not about the data. It's about the fact that you're supporting literally criminals, and you wish for them to break the law.
I mean, if you're a logical person, you want to break it into like a premise conclusion, and you're saying that, let's say, God forbid, a person committed a crime, and now they're before the judge, and the person pleads mercy for the person, let's have mercy upon the person. That does not mean they support crime. It means they support mercy upon the criminal. So there's a difference between encouraging people to break the law and having mercy upon people who have already broken the law.
Right, but by you
you don't recognize that difference?
But by you refusing to enforce the laws, that does create an incentive for them to continue to break the law.
Yeah, I agree with that when you have mercy upon the criminal, it could create an incentive for more people to break the law, but that does not mean I support breaking the law. It means I support having mercy upon the people who have already broken the law.
That's right. You support creating incentives for more people to break the law.
You could argue that, I do not support breaking the law.
Yes, you do. By definition, you do.
No, I support mercy. I support having mercy upon people.
Yeah, by allowing them to break the law.
Not allowing them to break the law, and saying the punishment has to fit the crime also.
Yeah, they broke U.S. Immigration laws. They should be deported.
And to me, it's not it's not really one of my big issues. So I'm not too active on immigration. That's just my bent is towards mercy. And like I said, I'm not voting. I'm not active on this issue. I'm not going to the protests. But as a Jew in Metro Detroit, saying 80% of Jews basically.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
Feel that way, and in your area too. Obviously in LA, you got a lot more Jews out there than here, and I'm sure 80-90% of Jews feel that way, and there's a certain reason why Jews feel like that. And saying in general, I'm a merciful person.
Yeah, and they're all.
It does not mean I don't believe in law and order.
Yeah, they're all just as permissive as you and are supporting law breaking just as you are.
Well, you could interpret it that way if that's your desire.
But de facto, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I'm saying let's say, God forbid, the punishment was death, and the law was set up, and the punishment is death, and I'm saying no, like you have to have mercy on these people. You can't just kill them because they broke this law. And you
Right.
made the
No,
same
it's
argument that you made the same argument
Dude,
de facto saying that these
it's
people
okay.
shouldn't.
It's okay, David. It's okay. You're
I'm
trying
gonna say
to.
if you want to argue pure logician
you're
here,
trying to.
you want to put your argument into a logical form. Does your conclusion legitimately follow the premises?
Yeah, it does. It does, and everyone in the chat can notice that. Anyway, it's been nice chit-chatting with you. I'm going to go prepare for my stream. I wish everyone a pleasant and happy evening. Everyone should floss their teeth and brush their teeth and get exercise. All right, guys. Cheers.
Okay. Anyone else? I went over this argument earlier today in the Pew survey, and I'm going to put a table of contents on that because it's a few-hour video to see that, and there is a logic to that, although I don't think it's a clear premise conclusion where that and it's saying there's a reason why he's hiding behind a fake name. Saying he holds a minority opinion in America, and there's a reason why I could use my real face and name and say this stuff, and he can't.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like who was it, Galileo? Or was it Copernicus? No, not Galileo. It was Copernicus who was considered a heretic, wasn't it? Because he talked about heliocentrism.
Yeah, man, that's in the video.
Yeah, so it's like if you're like an atheist or a materialist, in an age of fundamental Christianity or an evolution denier.
Basically,
an evolution support.
Basically, I mean, if he was using his real name and real face, he would basically be labeled as a racist and ostracized. And there might be a certain element of people who would really appreciate it, like Norvin or something, where Norvin's got his fan base of people who love him. But generally, I'm representing mainstream American opinions, and what he's saying is a minority opinion, and then it's factual that's why he's hiding behind a picture and a fake name, because he knows that's true. He can't.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, it's like
we could argue this logical, and you're saying no, Doobid, you're basically. I mean, if you want to come on, John, I'm putting the link here, and it's saying I'm merciful.
You're right, but what is it?
I'm not saying that people should break the law, and in any case, I would basically have the same opinion, where. Yeah, but saying that you're behind the avatar because you represent a minority opinion. You represent an opinion that majority, you might claim that what I'm saying is despicable, and you want to try to use your logical tautology to put me into the worst possible situation to say no, dude, you support breaking the law. You support being a criminal through because I want to be merciful upon illegal immigrants. And there is some logic to your tautology. I'm not saying it's completely false, but it's a fact that the majority of America disagrees with you, and because America is generally merciful and anti-racist, and you're saying being pro-white is not the same thing as being racist, and saying not having mercy upon people and generally does not make you look positive to say I have no mercy upon these people. I don't care what happens to them. Just get rid of them, send them back.
What about when America was nativist and it was a wide stream prominent opinion in America to have opinions it was basically a debate between should black people be sent back to Africa or should they continue to stay here and remain as slaves? Was America not merciful back then? And if so, at what point did America become merciful?
Well, I mean, there were some people that had some pretty harsh opinions, and generally, history may over the long term has judge them in different ways, and you say like there's a reason why Abraham Lincoln is considered one of the best presidents in American history, and
yeah, it's not because he wanted to send black people back to Africa. It's because he's remembered for liberating slavery, even though both of those things are true.
Well, he said a lot of things, but I'm saying, what did he do, and what actually happened, and we don't have to. You were saying generally, it's good to be merciful, and saying like we don't remember positively cruel people, and okay, people maybe done cruel things or they have inconsistent opinions. But generally, mercy is considered a good trait and cruelty is considered a bad trait. And you're saying, okay, but I support law and order. I'm trying to, do the right thing, and I want a good society. I don't really want to be cruel, but being cruel is the only way to have a good society. That's generally not most people aren't going to look up to someone who espouses those kind of opinions. Someone, mercy is a pretty universally respected principle.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, and if you want to like narrow it down in like this really like kind of annoying materialist way, if you're familiar with like a lot of the work on like morality, please go ahead.
Cruelty to whites and saying being multicultural, that's what I had that long argument with and then he keeps on changing his name. He's saying like, like bringing immigrants into your neighborhood or making the society less white isn't necessarily cruel or causing harm to anybody.
No, I was just going to bring up Jonathan Haidt's morality, and we can, if you want to like try to narrow more like you can say like mercy, talk about like the mercy thing. You can talk about other types of morality, and I mean you can say one type is better than the other. I mean, what I'm curious about is
basically people are giving these arguments to say like, oh, calamity, you have to be cruel, because if you're not cruel, something worse is going to happen.
Are you familiar with the book Camp of the Saints, Doofit?
Which one?
The book Camp of the Saints. I've never read it, but it's an interesting premise. I've heard it described to me. The book Camp of the Saints. It's a French book. So I think it's decades old. The premise behind it is effectively there is mass starvation and famine and due to overpopulation in, I guess, certain portions of the developing world. And I mean, this is a very kind of Eurocentric, indulgent fantasy, but I can see where they're coming from. And it's like, and basically these people who are starving and coming from these overpopulated countries are crowding into. I think that was it France or Europe or some portion of Europe, and effectively because Europe says yes, bring more in and more in and more in, more and more of these people keep coming, and then effectively I think Europe ends up being overrun. So Europe ends up just effectively at the same level as the rest of the world. So it's like then no one has a good quality of life, and everyone is suffering and miserable and overpopulated, etc. So and low social capital now because there's this like mixture in Europe, and now there's all this resentment, etc. And the idea is it's Camp of the Saints. It's like they were trying to be good, they were trying to be merciful, but their mercy backfired and ended up actually now everyone's having a less good time, everyone has less resources, everyone's starving, everyone's overpopulated. So overall, maybe it would have been better to come up with another solution that's on its face less merciful, and the more merciful approach ended up causing more people to suffer. And it's an interesting premise because it makes you think about such things. What are your thoughts about a premise like that? What would you do in such a circumstance?
But you got to think things through. I'm not saying it's not reasonable to think these things through and have these thought experiments. But if you're just having the possibility of a negative outcome to justify cruelty, you got to be extremely careful, because I think most people would want to be on the side of mercy as opposed to cruelty, and so when you're bending towards cruelty just because the potential of something bad to happen, you have to really have thought this through, and or you're just going to say like most people's life is going to be mostly suffering and pain, but it's conceivable there could at least be a handful of happy people. And so we're going to be cruel to the masses in order that there could at least be a happy few. And those arguments, I think, are intrinsically flawed. And we could go into that, just thinking that there could be some super class Ubermensch and the rest of humanity will be suffer is, to me, those are intrinsically flawed. And if they're, there's still people still seem to be watching. No one's jumping in. If you want to examine the logic behind that, I guess we could do that.
You talked about being cruel to the masses for a happy few, isn't that in, let's say, indigenous majority European country, what, or
Well,
or
really,
even in
that's the
or
false
even in an Arab country, why it's wrong for, like, let's say,
that's the
why
false
people get
complaint
mad at people like
behind
me for,
anti-Semitism.
yeah,
Saying
yeah, yeah.
that they're willing to be cruel, God forbid, to the masses, in order that the Jews are going to be able to prosper while the masses suffer. And then you put like whites or whoever in that scenario, that that's a flawed argument. That even if you did, like, saying to me, that's not actual Jewish theology. And if there was a Jew proposing it, I would say that's the same flawed theology as anyone else proposing it.
So you are in support. So what is your workaround of this scenario? Do you think that, let's say, I guess whether in its radical sort of Camp of the Saints form, or if it's in its milder kind of softer forms, as it's in effect in the West right now, like do you think, because people are always saying, oh, multiculturalism is bad, people coming into the West is bad. What are your thoughts on the legitimacy of those grievances? Just because I mean, fundamentally, this is the crux of like AC and BigCatKayla were talking about this earlier, and I mean, you and Brundle brought this up earlier. Like, this seems
I had
to
that
be
long
some of the crux of
conversation.
contention.
That first Ask the Rabbi did, where degenerated into. This Tuesday, and Norvin came on, and I'm not sure if you were there, but like Manic was there, and I went through very, very step by step. The logic of it is you have to to be irrationally xenophobic. If you're rationally xenophobic, at least like have a rationality. So you're saying you're irrationally xenophobic, you have to demonstrate a harm, and you have to really have the analysis and facts behind what you're saying to say these people are causing bad things coming into our society. There's a legitimate harm that could happen to us when you allow more people in and the way of life to change, or are they just being irrationally scared? They're scared of people who are different irrationally, and not to their own benefit, to their own detriment. And just saying, like, just unfounded ethnocentrism, which might be natural. You're saying there's a natural inclination to be irrationally ethnocentric, but is it even in people's best interest? So obviously, as a Jew, we know we could examine what's in the Jewish people's best interest as a minority, as the unique condition of the Jewish people, and then say, okay, I'm not, I guess I'm partially white or Scottish, that most have some of my blood, but to look at it from the white person's perspective and saying, do they have rational fears, and are those rational fears enough to justify affecting the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness of other people, and let alone from to making to putting a wall in front of other people's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, to actually being cruel and causing suffering to them. And really, these things probably could be reduced to logical arguments of premises and conclusions and tautologies, and maybe it's worth the intellectual lesson to try to do that. And that's I spent like 2 hours with Brundle and Truth Seeker, whatever he's calling himself, to try to go through that. Like, are you legitimately being damaged by these people enough to justify putting a block before their life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, let alone to actively cause suffering to them? I don't even know if Babs is still here.
Oh no, I'm listening. I mean, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I don't know. I think that.
I mean, if you say that,
I don't even necessarily think
planet,
you're not really speaking my language when you say things like that. You're speaking the America language, but
where you're saying all people around the planet have the right to pursue these things.
Jump out the window. Let's go.
Yeah, I think that life, liberty, and the pursuit. I don't think liberty. I think that liberty has been a bad thing in my life personally. So I don't think liberty is something I'd advocate. But I guess life is good. We can agree on that one.
Because you made bad decisions. You were given freedom to make your own decisions, and you made bad decisions.
Not only that, but I was put in an environment where bad decisions were rewarded, socially and even sometimes economically.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd still favor liberty and say that as opposed to historically that was like when Napoleon, said that if he won and took over parts of Europe, he would liberate the Jews. And the Lubavitch Rebbe said that'd be a bad thing because once the Jews are liberated, they're no longer going to be religious. They're going to dump the commandments and dump the way of life, and that it's better to live under the suffering of the Russian Empire, the Tsar, than to be liberated and leave our teachings. I mean, there is that school of thought, and you could say you were liberated, and the Lubavitch Rebbe, the first Lubavitch Rebbe was right. As a result of your liberation, you became sinful and broke the path of our ancestors. I mean, that there is historically that argument, and there is some logic to that, but it's that, like, in general, most people sided with Napoleon. Most people wanted full equal citizenship. Most people wanted economic opportunity to be treated as an equal, and they didn't want to live under poverty and oppression of people, just so that they would be protected from making bad choices. Kaiser, someone want to come on? I put the link in the chat if you want to join into
I mean,
this.
I think that makes sense, but I think that's also because most people are motivated by like their id rather than past living in prefrontal cortex. But yeah, I agree.
Really,
like
the sages say, I put the link in the chat if you want to join in this, Kaiser. But I mean, the sages say that that's what the angels argued. When man was created, the soul was that the soul doesn't want to enter the body because the body only desires to sin. And as the sages Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai argued whether it'd be better or not that man had been created, and Beis Hillel agreed that it doesn't make sense that God created us, because like our nature is just to desire sin and do sin. So why were we even created in the first place? So I mean, if you're taking that argument and just saying like free will is a bad thing, liberty is a bad thing because the nature of man is to sin, and the more free will and the more liberty you give him, the worse our behavior is going to be. And and I would prefer to take a more positivistic view on human nature and saying that we could conceivably be given freedom and make the right decisions. And from that argument, God forbid, you carry it to absurdity, and you're saying that, okay, why, God forbid, just kill yourself now, because all I'm going to do is sin for the rest of my life anyways, so I might as well just end it now because I'm losing the battle.
Yeah, I agree. I think that balance is needed, between a negative and positive approach. Yeah, there's always nuance to be considered, as you say. Yeah, unless anyone's going to come on. I mean, do you have any final concluding thoughts? I might start a second stream after this, but I think this topic's largely around.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Jakey Jake, claiming like he's really thankful to his father that one time he slapped him, and you're just saying like oh, if my God forbid, my dad had only beat me more when I was younger, maybe I wouldn't have made so many mistakes. I wouldn't have been so sinful. And you could you take like Donald Trump like attitude, discipline is good, and God forbid like like the person just needs a good ass kicking, so to say, and they'll whip him into shape. And you might find that in Israel, saying like if you join the IDF or something like that, went to Israel, you might find that the standard of living is less. It's a more mean society, and people suffering would whip you into shape. And but you don't find people that take suffering upon themselves voluntarily. Very rarely. Maybe a few righteous people, a few saints, and people usually don't desire suffering. They desire to remove suffering from themselves. And then you look at other people and you say like, I don't want other people to suffer, just like I don't want to suffer. And even though they may be a criminal, they may have made mistakes, they may have came from so that you want to be bent towards mercy, and people should weigh their words and so that okay, like I have a hard time putting my place in the position of white. So say, okay, what if I was white? What how would I look at it differently? And would I legitimately be scared of damage of these people coming into our country? And so, okay, if they're committing crimes, that's one thing. And I noted like President Trump, when he brings out these people who, God forbid, had their families, murdered by immigrants, and that's one thing. At least to construct an argument that you're justifying causing suffering upon other people to protect yourself. Yeah, no one's going to join this argument. Even it's a tough argument to say and saying like someone's going to disagree with me. It's tough to disagree, and Mo Giller. Now these people coming here to undercut labor for the lower classes, they're being put on a pedestal to regard the big corporations to make things fair. And I tend to be able to just look at it from other people's perspective. And so they're coming here possibly for their own selfish benefit, not necessarily to be criminals or cause any pain to you, but to get ahead. And to some possibility in a zero-sum game, they're getting ahead can cause negative things to you. So you want to put in a complete pejorative that these people are causing negative things to the world by trying to advance themselves up. You're going to be in a bad situation where you say that your success is dependent upon other people being less fortunate than you. And that's not the world I believe in. That's not the God I believe in. I believe in a God that has the possibility to bestow bounty and goodness upon all creations. And I don't think you want to find yourself in a situation where your blessing is dependent upon other people being held down. And I mean, just this guy's name, like, I don't really think you're going to argue with me. I'm saying, like, just people putting blasphemies in the chat and, almost no one using their real name. It's sent like, have you really thought through your arguments? Do you really? It's saying to, especially when you're arguing for cruelty to other people. You're saying, okay, like, I agree, like, I understand that you want good things to come to yourself and you want to have good lives, and you might have ethnocentrism, just like Jews have ethnocentrism, and whites are worried about, they think their country's slipping away from them, and these are legitimate concerns. But you don't want to become cruel. You don't want to lose the trait of mercy, and you want to have the big picture. You want to understand these greater forces, to look at a greater reality that it's unlikely you're going to be able to have a good life while other people are suffering. And these are basic theological, even atheist utilitarians could appreciate these arguments. It's Maslow, and these people aren't necessarily bad or evil. They're just doing the best with the situation they're in. And I showed the statistics earlier saying there's 250 million migrants in the world from the statistic you showed earlier, and the top destination for all of those people is America. That's more people, about the equal to the population that America right now. There's 200 million people that want to come to America. They're ready. I'm saying they're already migrants. They're already on the move, and they're ready to pick up and come here to America. So you have to have some logic to it, understand the situation. And you just want to close the border. I've had these arguments with Norman and Rodney and many other people, and you're saying, like, well, demographically, we're very, the United States is one of the most sparse population density places in the world, and so the forces to be of entropy, natural order thing will be for more densely populated areas to come to the less densely populated areas. So there's going to be these great forces of pressure for people to come here. And economically, there's a lot of wealth here. Generally, people, when they go someplace, they want to come to wealthier areas. So the better the United States is, the bigger the pressure for, with 250 migrants in the world. And the top destination for those people is here in America because it's the best place to come to. And so you're going to have a hard time closing off those borders if you look at it morally, ethically, and to just be cruel isn't the answer. And saying that, I'm not saying there's not answers, and it's good. That's why I'm here discussing it. And that's why I'm still talking. There's 20 people watching. I keep on putting the link in the chat, to see if someone's going to come on. Saying someone just wants to attack me or come on. They don't have the balls to just come on and yell obscenities at me. It's like Etche or something who's at least going to try to propose a logical argument that because I want to have mercy upon illegal immigrants, that like I'm some sort of degenerate. And I don't expect Holly to come on and argue with me, but I'll at least read what you say. I mean, at least you're not embarrassed to use your real name and face, and you're not really saying degenerate things. You're saying there are so many people here who hate us already and don't respect the country, invite more people, it will just get worse. And it's saying, who is the us that they hate? And it's saying they hate, you're saying, is it a natural tendency of the poor man to hate the wealthy man? It's saying, who is the saying they hate us already. So if you look at it, it's like Ann Cutler saying, hate us from where you come from. You're going to hate us anyways. So, it'll be easier for you to hate us behind a wall. And walls usually don't work. So you have to really think about what you're saying. And saying, if you do look at that it's a natural tendency of the poor man to hate the wealthy man, or you're saying it's a natural tendency of there to be racial tension, and you're going to come into a conflict theory where you're going to try to defend your border and your country. It's going to be very difficult to do that. And to a cruelty aspect too. You're saying, are you yourself going to be cruel? You're going to come cruelty upon yourself because other people hate you? Say good fences make for good neighbors. That's a saying. I know that's true. And saying that's okay. There's a house, saying that this is America. We have the right towards self-defense with deadly force. I mean, God forbid someone breaks into my house. I have the right to use deadly force to defend my property. And but in the public square, that's different. You're saying private property. You could have private property, but the public square is a different. Your claim over the public square is much less than your claim over private property. I'm saying, Holly, you're an attorney. You know that that's true. So I'm saying, good fence makes for good neighbors generally refers to private property, and now we're talking about in the public square. It's do you want fences in the public square? Do you want segregation in the public square? You're saying, do good fences make for good neighbors? Is that a pro-segregation argument that having, God forbid, separate areas for blacks and whites in different nations makes for good neighbors? And say, no, that's obviously not what that meant. That refers to private personal property rights. And you say, so what about Israel bulldozing houses and shooting people? I agree with you. I find it horrible that Israel is doing that right now, and I oppose ethno-nationalism in Israel. Personally, I think Israel is an ethnic state. Ethno-national state is a bad idea, and it's a problem.
How is Israel an ethnic state? There isn't even a clear definition of what a Jew is. It doesn't say this is a country you have to have Levantine Hebrew blood. It's not an ethnic state. You can just convert and walk on in. That doesn't seem like an ethnic state really to me. Maybe sort of.
It's the same problem like to define white and saying, so we haven't been able to answer the who is a Jew question, but we know that Israel's a Jewish state, even though we don't know who a Jew is. I mean, that's just adding to the contradiction that people argue against ethno-nationalism. How are you going to define white? How are you going to make these borders? And so if you just had an ethnic, this is going to be the white state, even though we haven't been able to define white. So that's basically what Israel is. It's the Jewish state, even though we haven't been able to define what a Jew is. And saying, even though you could convert or whatever, Israel has ethnic passports. So if you're in Israel, your passport says what ethnicity you are. You're either, a Jew, an Arab, or a Christian, or however it's classified, and it says so on your passport. And that makes effects on your rights and privileges in the country. And, that's exactly my point you're making, that we haven't defined who is the Jew, even though we have a Jewish state. And to me, that's just that's why ethno-nationalism.
Yeah, the way I see it, Israel is sort of like a fusion of like ethno-nationalism, civnat, religious state, liberal democracy, and like a whole bunch of different things, but it's very far from either a traditional society or from some sort of right-wing kind of like ethno-racial country,
it's
which is
defined as a Jewish state. I'm saying it's written in the. I mean, Israel doesn't even have a constitution, but
but because it fails to define Jewish state, they might as well not be saying anything at all. And you know that.
But they do say it. I'm saying Israel is the Jewish state. It's written into the laws.
Yes, but when they say Jewish state, there is no definition for what a Jewish state is.
Well, there's councils of and that's the fact that the Haredi rabbis generally get to define who a Jew is. I mean, there's a Supreme Court.
But that hasn't always been the case for Israel. Israel used to be a Jewish state insofar as they saw it in a secular sense, in the way that I used like the term Hebrew state. Like Israel used to be, all you needed is an ancestor of Hebrew descent. it wasn't really a Jewish state back then, which is interesting. You know, it's like only now increasingly has like the rabbinical perspective been taken into account more and more when it comes to Israeli citizenship. It's pretty weird and interesting, the history of Israeli citizenship, because it's changed and fluctuated quite a bit.
Yeah, and it shows the flaws of nationalism in general, that we can't answer the question, who is a Jew, even though we have this Jewish state, even though the law defines it as a Jewish state, even though Israel law clearly has separate privileges and sections and where people could live and how the law applies based on the definition of who is a Jew. And then we can't even answer the question, who is a Jew, even though the law is set up for a system that clearly differentiates between Jews and non-Jews. So I mean, it's all a big mess, and that's my part of it. The reason I think ethno-nationalism is a bad idea. Like here, Holly, why did God have the Israelites slaughter all the surrounding tribes in the Bible? If it's a tough question, you could take the historical example and say times were different then, or you could look at it. A lot of ethno-nationalists, a lot of right-wing Jews, a lot of whites in America will use those biblical arguments to support, God forbid, doing cruelty and negative things. Saying, look, what the Israelites that we, God forbid, we took Israel through blood, through genocide, through killing people, and it's even condoned in the Bible, and the God of Most High told us to do it. So it's tough to know, and there's different approaches as a Bible believer. Either that the dispensation was different at that time, or that God forbid, that sometimes you got to fight, and that's the case, but so that's I mean, it's a worthy topic of discussion. Indeed. To try to understand how in reality, even the Quran, people argue about the Quran and saying that the Bible says some very difficult things to understand. But we know that God is bent towards mercy and kindness, even though some of the most cruel things possible are written in the Bible. So it doesn't seem to me that God believes in multicultural nations, but I'm not finishing reading the whole entire Old Testament. I'm saying the Old Testament's not too long. It's only like 600 pages. I've read it multiple times. I mean, you could conceivably, if you're a speed reader, you could probably read the Hebrew Bible cover to cover in one night. And there's a lot in it, saying to unpack what's in it, in the history. And, if you look at dispensational progression of man, commonly in the time of Abraham, most of the world was slaves. The Egyptian, either you had the priest and the royalty, and basically everybody else was a slave. In the time of Jesus Christ, the estimate is that half of the world's population was in slavery. Cruelty, death was the norm. I got my Steven Pinker book. I'm still not finished.
Oh, you were going to talk about the reduction of violence, yeah.
Yeah,
I frankly, I don't like the stuff, but I mean, I get where it comes from, because I think
saying that when you look at the dispensational interpretation of the Bible, that the cruelty and death and warfare that happened back then was different because the state of the world that was in at the time, where some even these things are worthy of more. And relatively, the Bible does paint this multicultural vision. I mean, one thing, the Tower of Babel before the sin, the natural state of man was to be altogether working in harmony towards one goal, and it was actually a punishment from God to make us separate nations and people and moving in different ways. And most of your time Israel, we talk about Israel as a priest of nations, and in Israel, Jerusalem being the center of humanity, with the leaders of all the nations coming to Israel. And there is largely the multicultural vision does come from the Bible. I could see, but these are difficult questions. I'm saying, I appreciate you watching this, Holly. You're an intelligent person, and these are difficult questions, and you're probably not going to find answers somewhere else. I'm saying, you gather the courage to come onto the stream and propose your own opinions, and you say, okay, you've watched Fox News and MSNBC and CNN, and you're reading the periodicals, and there's not good answers to these questions. So you want to try to voice your own opinion. You like the public square and saying, right now people are getting arrested, people are protesting, people are proposing extremely harsh things. yeah, I'm thank God. Like I'm glad I'm able to provide the service and create a forum to discuss these difficult issues. I don't know if we just want to turn this into like Ask the Rabbi or Ask Babs on random questions of Judaism. Like let's keep it on topic of ethnic and civic nationalism as opposed to just random topics. I mean, possibly the Haskalah is related to multiculturalism, and the breakdown of nationalism is related to what we call the Haskalah, the Enlightenment.
So you're saying that the separation from the Tower of Babel, that it was a punishment, away from this evening of multiculturalism. But at the same time, then why is the Galut portrayed as a bad thing, insofar as being dispossessed from our indigenous land?
You could take the purely mitzvah approach, that the reason the Galut is bad is because we can't perform the mitzvahs that are only applicable in Israel. And it's not nationalistic, and you could say nationalistic because we had a priesthood and a Kohanim and Levium. But from the pure mitzvah, that the reason why you desire to live in Israel is because you could only fulfill certain commandments in Israel. It's not like some nationalistic vision, but it's your desire to serve God, and you could only serve God in certain ways in the land of Israel. So there's one way you could certainly interpret it that way, and so that's why I say Zionism. Most rabbis, when Zionism came out until large proportion today, held that Zionism is a form of heresy. In the understanding of what you're going back to Israel for, you're going back to Israel to be able to perform the mitzvahs that you weren't able to perform outside of the land of Israel. Yeah, obviously, post-liberal age, there's a real distinction between ethnic and civic nationalism. Civic nationalism is based on ideas and where we meet in the public square and agree about how we interact, and it doesn't matter who you are. You could be any race, any nation, any religion, any persuasion, and as long as you conform to these standards of behavior, that's fine, as opposed to ethnic nationalism. It's just based on who you are, and it's not based on the standard of behavior. And a lot of the arguments people give against civic nationalism, you say, okay, like we're not going to be able to have the standard of behavior that we desire when we have all these different people, because different people behave in different ways. When in reality, civic nationalism is the one that's saying there's a prescribed method of behavior and system that we function by in the public square, and anybody who could function that way is fine. And your ethnic nationalism, you really, even if you were ethnic nationalist, you would need to be ethnic and civic nationalist, or you just can be like, oh, everything's going to be okay once we're all the same type people. So you got to think about that. When you're ethnic nationalist, you probably have to also be a civic nationalism also. So what are you going to do with the people who are part of your own ethnicity and don't prescribe to the way of life that you want? And to me, I'm more an idealist than a politician. So you're saying I don't care that any country. We got to be practical, and but I believe in progress.
I don't believe in progress. I think that we're in a Kali Yuga, if anything, or we're in sort of a moral, spiritual dark age. I don't think that there's been progress, at least in this kind of moralistic, like Whiggish sense of like the thing that Pinker is kind of trying to imply when he says.
You're just using that term when you say that. You're saying you're a Hindu. Were you saying, David, I'm a Hindu?
No, but I'm saying that the idea of the Kali Yuga, which I think is an idea that's echoed, you can see, like I think both in Islamic and Jewish thought.
No, clearly it's not.
Wait, I'm talking. I think in both Islamic and Jewish thought, of course, there isn't the cyclical idea of the Kali Yuga, obviously, but there is also an idea of a moral or spiritual kind of like pitch black of night before you go back into the day again. There is that concept, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the pre-Messianic age or something like that. So it's like, I think that I don't agree in like this kind of linear moral progress. Maybe there's technological progress, but I don't think morally things have gotten better. I think that in fact, even sometimes the technological advancement has made morality get worse, even if we're less violent today. I think that, if you look at morality, like Jonathan Haidt's morality, the care harm That's just one moral instinct, and that's what you're describing as mercy. That combined with like kind of the fairness and the care harm. And it's like, I get that, but there are also these other, moral impulses that are, not only are they able to be pinned down into these moral axes in this very kind of like autiste kind of materialist scientistic way by Jonathan Haidt in his work about morality, but you can also see these things echoed in like, all traditional concepts of morality, like including the Torah, including like you see ideas of morality coming from the what would be described as the sanctity impulse or the in-group impulse or the authority impulse. So and it's interesting. Have you read works of Jonathan Haidt before? I forget. It was a book that I read a very long time ago. It's called like the Righteous Mind, I think. It's very interesting.
I don't think so. I mean, that's what I meant about having convergent worldview, because like are you arguing in favor of Hinduism? Is that your point? You're saying that the Hindus are correct?
No. I'm just saying that I don't believe in linear moral progress. I don't believe in linear moral progress. I would just use the term as a stand-in. Perhaps I shouldn't have used the term. I should have been vaguer. I was kind of being cheeky. I should have said I think that in a lot of ways today we are in a moral dark age, even though we are less violent. We are in some ways more degenerate. There are more reprobates amongst us in a lot of ways, even if we're, let's say, more violent and we have better technology and we have more progress, quote unquote.
I mean, in Hebrew, we say Yerida Sodoros, the decline of generations, that we become further away from God. So in certain ways, there's a degeneration of each generation, and there's an elevation of each generation. But the Bible, the Judeo system is clearly messianic in belief that there is some sort of perfection that we're working towards, and it could be there's a decline in some ways till that happens. So saying, if Judaically saying you're rejecting a fundamental, and like in Reform sense that you reject the fundamental, and you don't believe in a Messiah, you don't believe in the perfect society that the
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is no. What I'm saying is simply that that I don't think that we have morally progressed now. Like, I don't think we can look at now 2016 in the West, in the places that could be said to be the peak of the West, the most modern, the most progress-filled and advanced places in the world, even more broadly right now. I think that we can say that those places are not like super moral places. I think that we haven't morally progressed. Yes, regardless of whether you're looking at it from a cyclical or sort of like fixed objective morality that we're working towards model. The point is there's like a blip on the sort of kind of Richter scale graph type thing. It's like it dipped down, and that little depression is the place that we find ourselves in right now today. I don't think we live in a moral age, is my point. I think that we live in an age of deceit and an age of usury and an age of godlessness and an age of pride and sinfulness and lust, etc.
Yeah, that's probably true. And there's certain things that we progress in, and there's certain things that we digress in, and like the decline, like argue with JF about evolution and degeneracy. So promiscuity is up, the sanctity of marriage is down. We've increased in homosexuality and abortion, and in a lot of different things. There's clearly a decline in morals, although there's definitely a progression in technology, in understanding of science, in wealth, in systems of government, and so you'd have to analyze overall that it's going to be a complicated series of differential equations with some things going up and some things going down, and to how that applies to systems of government, like the Haskalah, the Enlightenment, certain concepts. So we've degenerated in morals, but maybe certain ideas that are beneficial for humanity, like universal humanism, maybe the ancients knew about these things, or just the methods of governing, to even though we're degenerate in values, and maybe people care less about each other than they had historically. And there's certain population type, as there's more and more people, and so it has to be analyzed to really interpret that. And then if you want to give a theological understanding, like Kali Yuga versus how the Bible lays it out, so those are fundamentally theological and saying the Hindu understanding is very popular in these days. Vivekananda, when he came into America in 1893, and he, his famous World Parliament of Religions, he opened it up, and that's what he said. Like, you in the West believe in progress, and us in the East, we don't believe in progress. We believe in cycles. And so he's saying you're fundamentally, the West has been influenced fundamentally by these Hindu ideas. And so just the fact that you're using terms like Kali Yuga, that if you take them out of context, I mean, like, to appreciate Hindu theology and the further implications of what this.
Well, I think
Hindu
more
theology
consideration.
does.
I think more consideration should, at the very least, be given to those thoughts, or at the very least, I think that it is important to question the concept of the. It is important to question the concept that we have been progressing in a linear or even exponentially in a moral sense, especially kind of with a focus on, like, let's say, the Enlightenment, or a focus on, like, the past, like, 100 years or so. I think that that is a mistake. It just simply, and I think that it is a superficial analysis. I think that it's kind of spurious, and it only takes certain types of morality into account, as it were.
I even almost know that verse in Sanskrit. I'd have to look it up with, like, Namahat, Lord Chaitanya, who started the Hare Krishna movement 500 years ago. He says, in this era of Kali Yuga, this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only method for salvation is to chant the names of the Holy Lord. That's like the foundation of the Hare Krishna movement, and chanting Hare Krishna again and again, because we're in the Kali Yuga, and it's naturally the order of quarrel and hypocrisy. There's basically no way to, like, you have to resign and just kind of, like, yell the names of God again and again, because the nature of this era is quarrel and hypocrisy. And that's what, even like in this chat, like I'm out here, I'm trying to have civil, intelligent conversations, and like it's not really there. There's no real application, because we're in an age of quarrel and hypocrisy. I'm trying to do something that's basically impossible. And how am I able to somewhat, like, lift my head above this quarrel and hypocrisy? Relatively, I'm not. Like, I'm part of the quarrel and hypocrisy just as much as anyone else suffering from these conditions. But thank you, Ether. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. And through just chanting these holy names of God, somehow we'll be able to lift ourselves above this quarrel and hypocrisy of the Kali Yuga that's degenerating all of us. And so there is somewhat that paradox there, that by recognizing that we aren't making progress, somehow we could make progress, as opposed to in the West, the biblical understanding of progress, and we think we're making progress and we're really not making progress. But in the East, where they realize that we're not making progress, in some extent through that realization, we could actually make progress. Does that paradox relate to you at all?
Yeah, no, yeah, it does. It's an interesting concept.
I mean, that's to me, like, okay, like, I could consider, like, becoming a Hare Krishna. Like, I could really see that, because I, like, even at the height of wealth and power, and I could say, like, okay, I'm a connected Jew, and we could have our wealth and try to influence politics and lobbying, and whether it's right or left, and you just see it's all quarrel and hypocrisy. Somehow we might come out in advance, and, like, okay, we beat them this time, and we got to beat them again, and it's constantly a battle, and we have to use these methods that are largely subversive in order to advance our goals. And that's because we live in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, where there's really no other choice in the matter. And if you think like the Jews who are active in this type thing, you say, I'm just doing it because I have to. This is what a Jew has to do to survive. Don't you see what's out there? Don't you see what these people were saying about us? And so how could we rise above this quarrel and hypocrisy that epitomizes society today? And so I'm just going to shave my head and become a Hare Krishna and chant on the street corners. Like, I do feel like that, honestly. And so when you mention that buzzword, that Kali Yuga, to me, that's reminded of all the Hindu studies I've done, and trying to like, really, I should just shave my head and be a Hare Krishna on the street corner, because there's nothing we could do. We're not going to make any progress. There is nothing that could penetrate this quarrel and hypocrisy of the dark heart of humanity.
Yeah, I think you're drawing from some
Like
perennial wisdom.
The pessimism of
perennial
Hinduism.
wisdom there.
I mean, but you like the perennial.
That's not pessimism. I think that's just as optimistic as it is pessimistic in a lot of sense.
Well, the pessimism of Hinduism in general that has such a negative view on humanity. And I remember like my Hindu friends, who birthdays, saying like, "May you never take birth again." And I could theologically appreciate the theology to say, "May you never take birth again," as a sense of because there's these higher spiritual worlds and the possibility of better things happening in higher spiritual realms, and the soul doesn't belong in the material world, like Plato said. The body is a prison to the soul, and that may you never take birth again is like may your soul reach to heaven. But in some extent, there's an extreme pessimism about the human condition in life, to be like really like the blessing to somebody is that they don't get reincarnated, that they die, and that's the end of it. They don't get reincarnated and take birth again. Presumably in the West, like something like that would be almost ridiculous and unfounded. How could you be so pessimistic to wish someone that they never take birth again? As where like these perennial ideas and Kali Yuga are largely based on Hinduism, that would have a pretty pessimistic understanding in terms like you're not really making progress. Everything you think you're accomplishing, that's just false. You have attachments to the material world, and those are holding you down.
I think that's a good analysis, though, in a lot of ways. I think that analysis is needed in kind of the modern world, the modern West specifically. I think that analysis would balance things out a bit, because I think people have gone too far in the opposite direction.
That's why I say like the revival of Freemasonry, that somehow there has to be this universal brotherhood of man. Like I do believe in like whether we are making progress or not, or how the biblical understanding of like you like the 49 the Memtes Tume, where you have the 49 levels of impurity and the 49 levels of Kedusha. And they say in Egypt that the Jews had reached the 49th level of impurity right before God took them out, and also before Messiah comes, that we'll have to reach the 49th level of impurity, and we reach the 50th level. It's like the Yovel's 49 is 7 times 7, and then there's no coming back from that, and that we have to reach just that point of before the point of no return, and then God will save us and bring us to this messianic era. And the biblical prophets, not just revelation from the Christians, but almost all the prophets speak in these apocalyptic terms, where things have to get so bad that it's almost the point of destruction and no return, and within that there's salvation. And so that's basically how I believe. And it's hard to like these idealistic.
Yeah. Do you think that we're presently in that age of like the 48th?
Well, I mean, the 49, like, I mean, we're not quite there yet, but I mean, you look at, like, we're getting close, but no, I mean, saying there's probably,
that's kind of what I was talking about when I was.
I mean, we might only be in the 20s.
In this generic sense, I was talking about a dark age like that. So I think that your analysis holds water just as well. But that's effectively all the point that I was making when I was arguing against the idea of that we've made moral progress to wwhere we are right now. That's all.
I mean, God forbid, like I remember my rabbi in Brooklyn, he said that, to scare people about the, to avoid sinful life, or just what the Bible really says. And it'd say that God forbid, like the Holocaust is like summer camp compared to what's coming. And you think like, when the apocalypse happens, you can't even imagine how bad it's going to be. That, God forbid, all the pain or something a Jew might have heard about what happened during the Holocaust, that the apocalypse that's coming, it's going to make the Holocaust look like it wasn't even like it was summer camp. And so he's saying, like, and from that perspective, we might only be in the 10s or 20s, like in the terms of everything, the degeneracy, the abortion, homosexuality, promiscuity, and just lack of caring for each other and humanity. But compared to how the Bible lays out of what's going to happen, that we're only in like the 10s or 20s of impurity compared to what's coming.
Well, brace yourselves, I suppose. Yeah.
Wow. Saying we could repent. That's what I'm saying. That the revival of Freemasonry as some, how do you take all these different peoples? Like, okay, I'm a multiculturalist. So how are we going to live in this multicultural society? And that's why I think we need to revive Freemasonry to, what's that commonality of civic nationalism that's going to bind us together. The civic nationalism that will bind us together, there has to be some revival of Freemasonry to come up with this commonality of where we're going to meet in the public square and find commonality among all these different type peoples. So King Khafneus, according to classical Jewish sources, the Hebrew year is 6,000. Yeah, I mean, we're in the latest time for the initiation of the Messianic age. We're in the year 5,778, becoming 5,779 in a few months. So that's only 221 years, according to that. But really, that's not like Jewish law. That's a statement in the Zohar or something like that. So I mean, there's some understanding that the redemption should happen. The 6,000 years, like a Sabbath, like 1,000 years, the 6 days of creation, and then the 1,000 days of Messianic era. But that's not necessarily directly biblical prophecy. That's more like Kabbalah. So, like my rabbi used to say, like, what happens in the year 6001, if Messiah doesn't come? Like, yeah, you still got to do it. So you got to get up and put on tefillin that day also, so to say. But yeah, there is some light to draw upon. So if you could imagine, like, we're in the 20s now, and, if conceivably Messiah could come, the redemption could happen if we properly do what we're supposed to do. But, most likelihood it's going to take the full 6,000 years. So however bad it is now, you got 221 years. Imagine what's going to happen over those next 221 years with the rise of technology and all this different stuff happening. And you could be like a science fiction dystopia, all the different dystopian visions that the science fiction authors have been laying out, let alone what the Book of Revelations or the Hebrew prophets or the Kabbalists have, their dystopian visions. A lot of times the Bible's dystopia is far worse than any scientific science fiction or fantasy dystopia. Are you into science fiction or fantasy dystopia, utopians and dystopias?
I haven't read much fictional stuff in a very long time. But
either I.
Yeah, it's fairly interesting.
But I'm just saying, like, what do you think is worse, the dystopians that's laid out in the Hebrew prophets in the Bible, or the dystopia that of modern like movies?
Probably.
You think that like the Bible has the ultimate dystopia?
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, I guess I'm getting pretty tired. No one seems to want to join in. It's tough to argue.
Sorry, I'm just kind of low energy. I was about to make myself a bowl of cereal, but
yeah, I'm thinking I gotta get like a drink or something. And like, you don't seem so talkative, and it's kind of hard because basically, almost everyone who's
just
watching,
because I don't have much to say on the topic. Sorry.
Yeah, because basically everyone who's watching disagrees with me. Although it's hard to argue the point of like anti-immigration, or to argue for cruelty. To be pro-cruelty, even though there might be logic to it, like you were mentioning, you got to do what you got to do, but it's hard to take a cruel attitude, and even if it's possibly the best thing for society. So I could see no one's really going to come on and argue with me, and we've covered all these points. I mean, there's more logic, and probably more we could add, and it's unfortunate. I don't know why I have such a hard time with Analytic Chick. I guess she just sees me as a hypocrite naturally, like her understanding what Judaism's supposed to be. Maybe she converted or whatever, and so I'm just like a contradiction to her understanding for how things are supposed to operate. So the natural, like, it's got to be like an attack mode, or, like this guy's a hypocrite type attitude, and that's unfortunate. So I guess I'm going to sign off. I don't know if you.
I mean, I can see where you and her kind of butt heads with each other. I get it. It's just like, yeah.
It's just unnecessary. Yeah,
I totally agree.
I mean, I see post-liberal age. He's been watching a lot of my videos and seems to largely argue. And I'm not sure. I mean, you making some points. I'm not sure. I can't tell. Like if you're like an anti-Semite, or if you're like a Jew, or I mean, if you're from like the Netherlands or Europe or something, it's hard to understand what you're getting at. Like I see you in my chat and you make a lot of comments, and like sometimes they're interesting and positive, but a lot of times they're just kind of negative, and it's hard to follow a coherent argument. So I mean, if you come on the chat and you want to you come on the stream and say something, or like you're here just to attack me, like because you don't like me, you disagree with me, and it's just your chance to attack me, or you have a coherent. You made some points. It's hard, but it's hard to follow. Even like looking at my chat, like you're probably almost half of the comments here are from you, and they're largely negative. So I mean, to me, it's hard to. You have to, even Google's like automatically deleting your comments, and like I don't know if I'm gonna have to. I may or may not delete this stream, just because it might be low quality content, or I gotta be scared that they're something I could get a strike on. And I don't mind conversing with people I strongly disagree with, but I'm saying like you gotta try to be coherent, or at least civil to have a conversation. And saying like if you just challenge me to a fight or something like that, you just want to challenge me to a fight. You gotta see like is the circumstances it really meant for me and you to fight it out, or you just agree to disagree. There's plenty of channels that you just want to join on my channel to attack me again and again. If that's my karma, that's my karma. This age of quarrel and hypocrisy. I could see that like that my channel, the majority of the people watching my show don't like me and are here just to try to attack me. It's kind of mind-boggling that that's the case. You have any thoughts on that, Babs? That just the majority of people who watch me are basically antagonistic towards me, and their main desire is to attack me and refute me.
I'd say yeah, around probably like 50 to 75 maybe at a lowest like 40%, but at the very least I think that they still have a kind of affable type of general position towards you. I don't think that they actually really at the end of the day mean you that much harm, even if they are, like, let's say, ideologically opposed to you. I'm going to quickly be right back, and if you intend on doing like a follow-up stream or keeping this one running for longer, or maybe coming over to my channel, I would certainly be interested. But
yeah, I might get to sleep, and yeah, it doesn't seem this seems pretty dead, and it's like turn it into an Ask the Rabbi stream. Doesn't seem practical, but yeah, if you stream, it looks like Ichi Looks is streaming. And like we basically killed this topic, so blessings. I may or may not keep this up. I don't know if there was any good content in it, so I'll see in the morning. So you have a great night in Shabbat Shalom. I probably won't speak to you before Sabbath, maybe Saturday night or stream, but if you have a chance to enjoy your Sabbath, everyone enjoy your Sabbath, and be blessed. And hopefully these conversations are leading to some sort of progression to limiting quarrel and hypocrisy and moving towards solutions. That's my intention. And if that's not so, that's why I could just do presentations and say, at least like I've been doing decades of research now, and I could share some of the things that I've researched and thought about. And if I'm not capable of having productive debates and conversations with people, and I'll keep going with that. So thanks everybody for watching. I don't know, Tim, let's see. It shows me I got King Kafnas, Ben Noack, post-liberal age. Ben Noack, you've been watching me for a while. I appreciate that. I hope you're gaining from this. King Kafnas, God bless you. Some comments, post-liberal age. You've been here a little while. It's hard to tell if you're sometimes in blessings. So God bless. Sign out. Shalom, blessings to everybody. Let the conversations continue. And okay, I guess that's it. I don't even think I have a song in me. Maybe I'll do like a Loisa Goya Goya Loya Madu White Milk. Laisa Goya Goy Clara, Layuma Doy no Fama, Ine Mato Mano, Shavasachim Yam Yam, Ine Mato Mano, Shavasachim Yam Yam. Ine Mato Shavasachim Yam Yam. Okay. Great night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Hope for better things.